I'm telling y'all, Donald Trump is a Tartarian descendant. Take a look at his son, Barron Trump. And this is a year old, and it's just now going viral. He is 6'7" at the age of just 17. The Tartarian Empire is shrouded in mystery. Nobody really knows what happened to them. So some believe they could be thousands of years old. If not, they never even existed. But in this video, I'm going to show you proof that the Tartarian Empire actually did run much longer than anybody realized. And the theory that Trump actually does descend from the Tartarian Empire may not be so far-fetched after all. Let's start with this image that depicts the flags of all nations. It's allegedly a picture from an encyclopedia from 1865. You can see here, it even has a pirate's flag of nations. So, pirates were actually represented as a nation as late as 1865. And what's odd is that's basically all I could find out about this image. There really isn't much information out there on it. It was authenticated as being from an encyclopedia from 1865. So it is valid, and it does represent the nations of the world. And if you haven't noticed why the internet has been buzzing about it, is take a look here. It has a flag representing the nation of Tartary. Well, I don't know about you, but I find it odd that a flag of nations picture actually depicts the flag of Tartary. If it didn't exist, or if it existed in a prior time, then why would they have it on an image representing 1865? And what's more odd is look what it's right next to. A flag of nations representing allegedly China. Now this flag is really a mystery. Yes, it says it represents China, but there isn't much information beyond that. It's very hard to find any information at all on this flag. Nobody knows exactly its origins, but I find it odd they set it up right next to Tartary. So if you take the time and go back to look up old maps of Tartaria or the Grand Tartary, it seems to cover almost all of Asia. There are many that believe the Tartarian Empire even spilled over to the United States and covered most of it at one time. This is where the world fairs come in. Many theorize that these world fairs that were held across the entirety of the United States. The United States had the most world fairs of any country in the world. Dozens of them, showing off new technologies such as moving sidewalks, light shows. This was back in the 1800s when it was just horse and buggy to get around. The buildings were ornate and beautiful. They looked like ancient Rome. The structures were colossal, some of them housing 300,000 people. As you can see behind me, the lights were absolutely amazing. And you're telling me they got all this power and they ran it from the Niagara Falls? I find that hard to believe. To me, they're utilizing another source of power, some sort of free wireless energy. So they had these world fairs and they brought in adult orphans to allegedly repopulate the country and showed them the capabilities of humankind. Many believe they had been here for hundreds, if not thousands of years from a previous civilization. Really, nobody knows what happened to them. It's almost as if they just vanished off the face of the planet. That's what's so peculiar about the flag of nations that was made in 1865, showing the Tartarian flag. Did Tartary exist up till 1865? And if so, where did they go? Why is there no remnants of their history? There's virtually nothing in the history books pertaining to them, and nobody's been taught anything about them. They're ghosts. And then the video I found on the internet that showed what I believe is the citizens of Tartary at the world fairs or before the world fairs. You can see here, this gentleman right here, standing next to him. That guy has got to be close to 7 feet tall. And then the one right below him, standing next to him. That gentleman is also close to 7 feet tall. These people are much taller than the average size male back then in the 1800s. A closer look. This gentleman towers the other gentleman. I believe that is the normal size gentleman and he is a Tartarian. The video, I believe, depicts one of the last videos of the Tartarians. These gentlemen right here tower over everybody around them. And I can't find any type of military that have these same uniforms in history. Then take a look at this gentleman right here. Towers over the rest of the band. I believe they could be from Tartaria. This guy is a mammoth. back in the 1800s when people were supposedly not very tall. And in no history books whatsoever do they talk about a nation that has that colossal size, especially back then. They've always convinced us that people are taller than they've ever been, which simply isn't true. The question we should be asking ourselves is, why would they go to such extremes to keep a nation suppressed along with their history? Because after the World Fairs, they demolished all of the beautiful buildings allegedly were built just for the World Fairs in a matter of years. It just seems suspect. Did these people have super advanced technology for the 1800s, and this technology included free energy for everyone? And my big question is, what happened to them? How did they just disappear off the map? Where did they go? Nevertheless, if you watch these people move and watch their gait, they seem very tall, especially this gentleman in the front. Look at that guy. Compared to the rest, he's a giant. His gait is similar to that of our boy, Baron Trump. This kid is a giant. He is huge. 6'7" at the age of 17. Where does that height come from? And it's funny because I've discussed this with my girlfriend. They say that in legend and lore from the outside worlds, sometimes people or descendants of ours come to our land to try and help influence us to be better, to reach for higher heights, enlighten us, to help us become better versions of what we can be, to find our true destiny, and to act like humans are meant to act. Oftentimes, notable figures in our society are alleged to come from beyond the ice wall. They come back because they care about humanity. Because as humans, we are not meant to hate. We're not meant to be jealous. We're not meant to hurt each other. We're meant to love each other. A so-called white hat society that is for the good of the people and the good of this land. So what do you think? Could Trump be from outside the ice walls? Is it possible? Or could they be of Tartarian descendant? This is just me spitballing. You never know. It's hard to say. But it's crazy that his son is this tall. He is huge. And it's crazy because they've managed to keep it kind of a secret until now. It's starting to become more mainstream that he's so damn tall. And I've heard that he's kind and he's a gentle giant, very kind kid, and a good kid. So what do y'all think? Is what you see behind me actual satellite imagery of Malaysia Flight MH370? Whether it is for sure or not, it's creating all the buzz across the internet right now, and many theorists believe it to be authentic. And you already know, your boy has the scoop on what it's all about, and possibly even where it ended up. Malaysia Flight 370 went missing back on March 8th, 2014, and its disappearance captivated the entire world. The massive Boeing 777 took off with 239 occupants, 227 of which were passengers. As it departed from the Kuala Lumpur airport, destined for Beijing, China, everything was normal until about 38 minutes into the flight, when it took a mysterious U-turn. Air traffic control had radar on it up to this point. Then, Malaysia military picked it up for another hour, when it finally disappeared for good. And that's where the mystery started, and it has remained unsolved since. Regardless of its disappearance almost 10 years ago, people still ponder over what happened to it. And that's why there's so much buzz surrounding this footage. It's absolutely intriguing. Whether authentic or not, we'll probably never really know. Nevertheless, any evidence is worth looking at, considering nobody's really even come close to solving what actually happened. But before we continue, a little background information. I was actually sent this footage months ago. I stumbled across an email from a random follower, and the subject said MH370, so instantly I was intrigued. According to the anonymous source, this footage actually was leaked by the Russian military. It said it actually came from the hands of a Russian soldier who was seeking asylum in the United States. In order to gain this asylum, he said he had footage of what actually happened to MH370. Supposedly this footage is it. Now, can we authenticate that? Absolutely not. It could be total bull. But needless to say, fascinating backstory. Like I always say, I provide the information and let you decide. Now let's check out this video. Alright, so here's the full-length video. You'll see the plane enter the shot from the top of the screen. From there, it looks to be satellite imagery from above the plane. Now, people online were saying in the comments that they believed it was below the plane. I don't see where they get that. It doesn't look like that to me. As you can see, a UAP enters the scene and begins circling MH370. Then it splits into two, then three, and they begin circling. This is when I believe that the radar was rendered useless. These UAPs were actually blocking it from view. At this point, I also believe they're in control of the flight path of the craft. Here you'll see, all of a sudden, they make it completely vanish. Gone. Now this is thermal imagery. I believe this is from a drone, which also tells you this was a planned attack, that there was some very highly technological equipment involved in this, which tells me it's from a very high up and high ranking entity. Possibly military. Not sure though. Notice the pattern that those UAPs are flying in. Almost like a helix. It zooms in and you'll see here, the three of them come together and boom, it disappears completely. Now that's actual speed. Here's slow-mo. Check it out. There was no sound on this footage. Perfect triangle. Now, if this footage is real and this is true, what's the motive? What was on this plane? Well, there's a lot of theories. I've heard from Malaysian underground mafia gold to high-ranking government officials wanting some technology on board. There's all kinds of conspiracies surrounding it. Who knows which one holds true? But say this video is real. In a hypothetical situation, say it's authentic. Where did it end up? What happened to it? I've heard a lot of people talking about this time traveler on TikTok who claims that they'll be back in the year 2026 or something like that, and it'll seem like they were only gone for 2 seconds to them. Possible, I guess. I mean, you saw how it disappeared. It could be something related to time travel. Who knows? But I don't believe that's the case. Why? Well, a while back, a follower emailed me. And he emailed me a picture on Google Earth. This picture was absolutely fascinating. And after a little research, it definitely hit a chord. Let me show you. Now, before I begin, I'm going to fact check myself. According to Snopes, this Google image of a plane that looked to be underwater off the coast of Crooked Island is in fact not a plane underwater. According to Snopes, it's actually a composite image of multiple satellite photos of a plane that was above the water that was taken throughout Google Earth's whole tenure back to 2004. And they say that its shadow under it is what we're seeing. Now, could be the case, absolutely. I'm not saying it's not. Most likely it probably is because it's a fact check, right? So I'm just saying this is what Snopes has found out about it. All right. That being said, check this out. So this video is from a live I did months ago after being sent this image from Google Earth. You'll see that it's just east or southeast of Crooked Island in the Bahamas. And what looks to be underwater is a plane. And if you look closely, it looks to be a large plane. Then I proceeded to measure the dimensions. The Boeing 777-200 extended range is 242 feet from nose to tail. This measures at, take a look. Then from wingtip to wingtip, it measures 212 feet. Observe. Interesting. What's more interesting is Crooked Island does have an airport. That's 5,000 feet, which according to Malaysian officials is just enough to land the 777 from 3,800 to 5,200 feet. Now, I'm not saying it is, I just think it's kind of intriguing, the thought process of the possibility, given that previous footage of it disappearing is true. Could it be an anomaly of extraterrestrial origin? Possibly. Why? Because Crooked Island is just inside the Bermuda Triangle. And the way it disappeared, could it have been a Bermuda Triangle on the opposite side of the world? Who knows? Or could it be extraterrestrials behind the disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle the entire time? Now that more extraterrestrial phenomena is being exposed, we have to consider the possibility. What's interesting is when I shot the video during my live, the plane was completely visible. But now if you go look at it, this is what it looks like. You can still kind of see it, but it looks covered up in some way, maybe satellite image layering, who knows. Regardless, if you like to consider the possibilities or think outside the box, is it possible? Could that be MH370? Who knows? Like I said, Snopes and fact checkers, it's just layered satellite imagery. But if you like to keep options open and not limit your constructs, I believe it's possible. Very possible. I mean, if you believe the footage to be true, why can't this? It's all out there. It's crazy. But as you know, if you watch my channel, the possibilities are endless. Was there a super advanced civilization inhabiting Earth as recent as just a couple hundred years ago that was taken out by a mud flood? Many people seem to think so, and the evidence has been right under our nose the entire time. Tartaria, originally pronounced Tataria without the R, is the name of an empire that was here before the Mongols and originated in northern Asia. Eventually, it spanned the entire northern hemisphere. Great Tartaria was the largest empire of its time and would have still been the largest empire today. The people of Tartaria were up to 12 feet tall, and the empire flourished due to, in part, of the civilization being a leader in advanced technologies, free energy, and architecture, but mainly in part because they were beings of love and light, and their society consisted of a melting pot of all different races and ethnicities. It was a place where discrimination didn't exist. All were accepted, no matter what their background. You won't find any information about Tartaria in the history books, as it seems the powers that be don't want us knowing about this civilization of super advanced and technological people. Many today believe this is why they eradicated them with a great flood. This resulted in an entire civilization buried. The Tartarians, or the Tartars as some may call them, were an advanced civilization of giants. Some believed maybe even the descendants of Noah, and they made up the great Tartarian Empire. As I said, they were giants that stood 12 feet tall, and like civilizations before them, they were shorter than the previous one. Like our civilization today, they were shorter than the ones before them. They stood possibly 25 to 50 feet tall, and the ones before them could have been hundreds, and the ones before them maybe even miles tall. It seems that after each great deluge, the civilization that follows is shorter in height. Civilizations in the current astrological age, the age of Pisces, are shorter in height than civilization that existed in the previous astrological age, the age of Aries, and will be taller than civilizations that will exist in the next astrological age, the age of Aquarius. Some believe that the Tartarians were breatharians, a being who does not rely on the digestion and burning of calories from food or water, but rather receives energy straight from ether, out of our atmosphere. Ether is thought to be the very fabric of our being, the fabric of the space-time continuum that would associate with electrons, the wind, the Holy Spirit, and the atmosphere, and the gases in the atmosphere such as oxygen, nitrogen, and hydrogen. Another interesting point, since the Tartarians quite possibly had an altered digestive system than the one we have, they had no need for toilets in their bathrooms. This could be one of the reasons why bathrooms in the recent past have been used quite extensively more as social gathering powder rooms to not only freshen oneself up, but to hear and spread local gossip. The Tartarians were also said to be masters of masonry, brickwork, and steampunk-style technology. They had universally free energy and the most grand architecture you could ever lay eyes on. Their Roman Gothic style of architecture can still be found all over the world as water ducts, banks, water stations, churches, hospitals, and similar public and city work type buildings. Cathedrals, mosques, churches, and other buildings of worship were actually originally etheric power stations, water stations, and even sound resonating acoustic healing centers. It's said that buildings today that we use as places of worship were actually functioning hospitals during the reign of the Tartarian Empire. Rather than what we were taught by mainstream science, Tartarian buildings were actually more similar in function to pyramids and temples found across the world. Through their ingenious engineering, intricate architecture, and super advanced technology, the Tartarians transformed Earth into a massive circuit board powered by the ether, just like the ancients did with the pyramids and the temples many, many years ago. How they did this was the crosses on top of the buildings were used as etheric electrical antennas. This was connected to rebar embedded throughout the building's entire structure. Even the streetlights that existed during the reign of the Tartarian Empire were tall electrical antennas. These streetlights harnessed the power of the ether, which caused the gases inside of the upper bulb to ionize and illuminate. According to historians, rather than glass, they believed that possibly these bulbs were made out of quartz crystal. These quartz crystal balls could have contained different substances such as mercury or radium, which reacted with the ether, or the bulbs contained nothing at all. And the quartz crystal itself is what reacted with the ether. And this is what I believe to be the case. Fireplaces were just as intricate as the house themselves, and different than what we do today with fireplaces. They weren't engineered to burn any wood. Chimneys weren't used to guide the smoke from the fireplace to the outside of the home. How it's believed to have worked is the rebar in the home was connected to the rooftop tower dome, which was possibly filled with substances such as radium, quartz crystal, or mercury, and the metal poles sticking out of the top and sides of the home. All of this metal was then connected to the metal backplate found inside the original Tartarian fireplaces and chimneys. Just like the crosses found on churches, cathedrals, and mosques, the metal poles sticking out of the top and sides of the buildings acted as etheric electrical antennas. These harnessed the power of the ether and focused that free energy into the chimney and out of the fireplace. There was also ductwork connected to the chimney that ran through the entire home. So they believed that the energy traveled through this ductwork and powered the entirety of the house. Similar to how spiders are able to actually grow and survive without food and water as long as they are touching their web, the Tartarians were able to grow and survive without food and water so long as they stayed inside of their etheric energized home. Along with this, the ionized air coupled with the rising and falling of hot and cold air currents created a pressurized electric vacuum inside of the chimney. During the winter, chimneys acted as electric vacuums, radiating trapped heat inside of the chimney out through the fireplace and the metal air ventilation duct connected to the inside of the chimney. And what's more is during the summer, the process would reverse, and the fireplace and air ventilation ducts would suck heat into them. Then the air ducts connected to the inside of the chimney from the inside of the house, and by way of the ionized air from the etheric electrically charged metal backplate inside of the chimney would force heat up the chimney and out of the house. So not only did they produce heat in the winter, it even produced AC in the summer, all completely free. See, the Tartarians were also one with nature, so they refused to cut down and clear cut forests and use wood to structure their buildings. If they used wood at all, it was very sparingly, because they knew that it provided the oxygen needed to survive. This is why they were so much taller. It's said today that the trees are merely bushes compared to what they were thousands of years ago. The oxygen that was once provided on Earth made the beings of Earth much bigger, much stronger, and the like. The truth is, what we're doing today to the rainforest and the trees is an absolute tragedy. Now to the mud flood reset. This great reset is what many attribute to the demise or downfall of the Tartarian Empire. What's baffling about the theory is that enthusiasts believe that it only happened as many as 200 to 400 years ago. Some even believe the mid to late 1800s. Buildings hundreds of years old, located all across the Terra, are known to be encased in a mud flow up to several stories high, and in some cases, even completely engulfing the buildings entirely in nothing but mud. You can find buildings that have an age of only a few hundred years, and find them to be buried entirely in mud. The windows and doors of the buildings are quite often found to be at ground level, and occasionally even found to be completely buried underneath the surface of the mud that covers the entirety of the area. The vast majority of these buildings are said to be located in Russia and East Asia, as that's where the Great Tartarian Empire was mostly located and where it originated. But as I said, these buildings are scattered throughout the world, even in America. Here you see some construction being done on the Capitol building in Washington. Yes, you heard me right. The Capitol building. Notice here, you can see the stains of the mud that covered well over 20 feet of the base of the building. So the question people ask is, were these buildings already here when we got here? Were they built by an entirely different civilization? And if this is the case, what type of deluge happened that brought that much mud into their area? And what's more, the question I have that bothers me the most is, if this was the case, then where are all the bodies? Where are all the skeletons and remnants of this civilization? They aren't being found. Were they saved by an ancient alien race? Were they taken off planet? Or did they maybe even go underground? Now with that, it is said that the government has found massive amounts of technology underground, caverns with high-speed trains running through them, trains that span the entirety of the earth. Were there once giant elder trees reaching miles high, spanning the entirety of ancient Earth? As of late, there's been an intriguing theory that's demanded a lot of attention across the internet, that the world was once populated with giant, massive trees that reached our atmosphere. Like the one you see here, for example. This is the North African country of Tunisia's Jugurtha tableland, located on the western side of the country where it shares a border with Algeria. According to mainstream geology, Jugurtha is a mountain formation known as a mesa, which is the Spanish word for table. National Geographic explains mesas are formed by corrosion, of which water washes away softer, more malleable rock from the top of a hill, leaving behind flatter, stronger rock. Most mesas around the world are actually wider than they are tall, but according to theorists, at its height, this tree was 2.5 miles wide and 10 miles tall. Whether or not these theorists are correct is yet to be determined, but I gotta say, the resemblance to tree stumps is uncanny, almost undeniable. So again, could these massive mountains be remnants of what was a population of behemoth trees spanning the entirety of the earth? The tallest trees in the world today are redwoods towering over California, but these are mere shrubs in comparison, standing in only 300 feet. So yeah, the thought of these being seedlings is absolutely mind-blowing. The past shows that at the end of the day, throughout our Earth's history, which is mostly unknown, there have been periods of gigantism. Remnants of prehistoric creatures that are giant have been found by archaeologists for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Prehistoric mammoths like the megalodon, for example, that reached lengths of over 100 feet. Or when another giant roamed the earth, dinosaurs during the Mesozoic era, which apparently there's now a new change to the theory of what actually caused the dinosaurs to go extinct. According to a new study, they're saying that it could have been a massive volcanic eruption. That was just a little side note that was apparently released within the last couple of days that I'd stumbled on while researching this topic. But back to the subject of gigantism. Some people believe in a theory known as the reduced gravity theory, or reduced Earth's gravity. This theory was put forth in 1987, suggesting that millions of years ago, they had half of the gravity that we had today. That present day gravity is much heavier, or it pulls on us much harder than it did in the ancient past. And that this is what led to dinosaurs being 4 and 5 times the size of elephants and giants existing. They attribute this to the expanding Earth theory, that Earth was once much smaller than it is now, and also the proximity of the moon theory, etc. But I've also actually heard the theory that the O2 content, the oxygen content, was much greater in the past, and this could have led to gigantism, or beings on Earth being larger. One scientist, for example, presented this as evidence proving that the O2 content was greater back then, is the fact that the Brachiosaurus's nostrils are no bigger than a horse's today. And that the only reason that would be is that it didn't need as much oxygen intake as a horse does in present day. That the O2 content was richer back then. But what would that be attributed to? Well, massive elder trees, right? And let's not forget the other elephant in the room, the fact that giant humanoid bones have been found in virtually every corner of the earth. It's alleged that it's been covered up, it hasn't been proved, but many theorize that giants actually did exist, spanning heights of 20 and 30 feet tall. It seems that many theorists think a certain institution may have covered this up, and they're now too embarrassed to share the truth, etc. I'm not sure on that 100%. I won't elaborate on it. Essentially, if all of this is true, then why is the idea of massive elder trees so far-fetched? Let's look at some ancient text and writing from the book of Enoch in the Bible. The tree grew and was strong, and the height thereof reached unto the heavens, and the sight thereof reached to the ends of all of the earth. That is Daniel 4:11. The following is a passage from the first book of Enoch discussing the tree of life, Enoch 26.1. And from there I went to the middle of the earth and saw a blessed, well-watered place, which had branches which remained alive, and sprouted from a tree which had been cut down. 26.2. And there I saw a holy mountain, and under that mountain, to the east of it, there was water, and it flowed towards the south. Another one from the second book of Enoch, 8.3 and 8.4. And in the midst of the trees that of life, in that place whereon the Lord rests, when he goes up into paradise. And this tree is of ineffable goodness and fragrance, and adorned more than every existing thing, and on all sides it is in form gold-looking, and vermilion, and fire-like, and covers all, and it has produced from all fruits, for its root is in the garden at the earth's end. End is Eden. One of the most interesting passages from the Bible I've found was Ezekiel 31, 1 through 9. Check this out. In the 11th year, on the first day of the third month, God's message came to me. Son of man, tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, that pompous old goat, who do you astride the world think you really are? Look, Assyria was a big tree, huge as a Lebanon cedar, beautiful limbs offering cool shade, skyscraper high, piercing the clouds. The waters gave it drink. The primordial deep lifted it high, gushing out rivers around the place where it was planted, and then branching out into streams to all the trees in the forest. It was immense, dwarfing all the trees in the forest. Thick boughs, long limbs, roots delving deep into the earth's waters. All the birds of the air nested in its boughs. All the wild animals gave birth under its trees. All the mighty nations lived in its shadows. The line that got me the most right there was, the primordial deep lifted it high. The waters gave it drink. Does that mean, and what I take from that is, the roots traveled so deep that they bypassed our oceans and broke into the waters below, meaning the large caches of fresh water below our ocean that's said to be 3 to 5 times more fresh water below the ocean floor than the amount of water in our oceans on the surface. And I thought this was interesting. It says, that marks the end of big tree nations. No more trees nourished from the great deep. No more cloud-piercing trees. No more earthborn trees taking over. They're all slated for death back to earth, right along with the men and women from whom it's dust to dust. And there are potential examples of these trees of life all over the globe. We have Ben Bulben in Ireland, Mount Connor in Australia, all flat and round as if something cut them clean. Mount Garfield in Colorado, the Superstition Mountains in Arizona, Mount Roraima and the amazing Cerro Atana in Venezuela. What's more is one of the local native tribes in Venezuela had a story about Atana. For the Piaroa natives, they called it the sacred stump that brings the fruits of the world. Their mythology states that it was a tree that reached the heavens, and it brought fruits to all creatures of the Amazon. Their story states that one day a god and his nephew of which turned into a paca, actually cut it down to get all the fruits at once. Then we have the Devil's Tower of Wyoming. And those of you that know Steven Spielberg's Close Encounter of the Third Kind know the Devil's Tower. It has a profound resemblance of an ancient tree stump that was cut down. And though gentlemen like Graham Hancock share the following info, it has not been substantiated, so doubt still remains. And when tracing back the original post on Facebook, it was actually posted by a satirical account. So needless to say, it likely doesn't have any grounds or any backing, but a claim nevertheless. In 2017, there was a claim that Wyoming scientists from the Wyoming State Department discovered a massive root system under the Devil's Tower. It spanned up to 4 miles deep and over 7 miles wide, was the claim. It's said that the photo that was used was Photoshopped in the end, and that the roots shown in the picture were actually that of a corn stalk. It went viral. The Wyoming State Department denied these claims and said they never conducted any type of experiments. But it put it out there, and nevertheless, you always got to wonder, maybe. Regardless of that, you have to consider almost every ancient society in the world. The majority of them have had some sort of record stating a tree of life existed, from the ancient Aztecs to the Egyptians. In the end, it's kind of telling that they all spoke or wrote of a tree of life in their ancient scribes. And if you're wondering what could have possibly cut them so cleanly and smoothly, now this claim is not founded and it has not been verified, but that has an unusual resemblance to a massive axe. Located in San Juan County, New Mexico, this is the Biste de Nazan Wilderness, a 45,000 acre trove of these types of anomalies. This structure in particular has led some to believe that giants were responsible for the felling of the elder trees. Some of them so massive, they did it in one foul swoop with that of an axe. Hard to say if there's any truth to it, but it's compelling evidence nonetheless. Regardless, again, it hasn't been verified. In the end, we may never figure out what exactly did it, or if these mountaintops are even elder trees at all. But the evidence is mounting. One last picture I got to show you guys. This is crazy. This is Mount Strickland in the Yukon of Canada. I mean, damn. Like I said though, at the end of the day, it hasn't been verified and it hasn't been proven, but it's fun to ponder over, right? Can't we all have an imagination? It's what we do. It's what I love to do. Present the stuff to you guys. You do what you will with it. Think what you will with it. I'm not trying to sway you any which way. My job is to just get your ticker ticking. I'm just trying to get y'all thinking and enjoying these awesome stories and these theories at the end of the day. So I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for more. Stay in the love, stay in the light. I am out. Oh, and last but not least, there's also the theory that the Lord cut them down to prevent giants from climbing them for the Great Flood. This video also comes from some older content, but it's on the secrets of the Vostok Mountains. Now, those of you that don't know, because I didn't when I first heard the story, the Vostok Mountains are in Romania. And lately, I've actually been talking to a follower from Romania, and she said there's a lot more to that place than meets the eye. In 2002, the government using ground-penetrating radar made a great discovery. And at the time, they planned on sharing with the people, but they have not. Though that's unfortunate, it gives me the opportunity to share it with you instead. So this is the Vostok Mountain Secrets of Romania and the secrets of the underground tunnels. But before we start, you know the drill. Hit that notification bell so you get an alert every time I post, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. The Secrets of the Underground Tunnels, Part 1. With the declassification of ground-penetrating radar back in 2010, even though they've been using it since the 70s, there's staggering new data that show there's a labyrinth of complex tunnels that span across the entire Earth. The following discoveries were made back in 2003. Namely, the US government, along with other superpowers, would find that there's actually 4 primary tunnels spanning for thousands of miles. And off those main tunnels, subtunnels that lead you deeper into the core of the Earth. They would state that the deeper you go, the bigger the megalithic structures would get. And in these tunnels, you would find rooms, huge rooms, with massive stone tables that were made for people much larger than us. What scientists would refer to as the projection room would contain all of the Earth's history. from her natural processes to the species inhabiting her. And these events could be replayed visually. Even at table, you can perform holographic experiments. The type of experiments? Mixing DNA. You could virtually mix the DNA of any two species on Earth, and it would provide a holographic image of what they would look like. They would also discover that these rooms are over 50,000 years old, and that they're all connected to each other by some form of energy. This same energy also protected the room, and if one of them activated, all four would. They've also figured out each of the room's locations. Of the four, the first one is located near the Egyptian Sphinx. The next one is located in Iraq, in underground tunnels somewhere in the city of Baghdad. The next one is Mount Kailash in Tibet, obviously a pyramid. Then finally, Vostok Mountains in Romania, where it's said that they have another Egyptian Sphinx. They would go on to say that the deeper tunnels would lead to a secret world under the Gobi Plateau in Mongolia. But it didn't stop there. They claimed the tunnels would lead to another secret world, below Antarctica. In the end, this connects to the German Tibet expedition in World War II, Hollow Earth, the all-seeing eye above the Egyptian pyramid, and much more. In 2002, the Pentagon was running many geodesic and military programs using satellites based on ground-penetrating radar technologies. And what they would find was absolutely amazing. The satellites would pick up a weird-shaped anomaly in the Vostok Mountains in Romania. They would also reveal that the tunnel was blocked in two different spots by the same energy. Basically, energy shields. The first one was at the beginning of the tunnel, blocking the entrance. The second one would be a huge dome-shaped barrier at the middle of the mountain. It's believed that Germans would be the first to encounter these energies in World War II. If it didn't kill them, it would send them out running with massive migraines. Some would even have heart attacks. Signor Massini, the leader of this expedition, would conclude that something important must be there. Part 2 next. In late 2002, the Pentagon, using satellites with ground-penetrating radar, would discover a large spherical-shaped cavern with a tunnel leading up to it in the Vostok Mountains of Romania. Now normally they would look past something like this and not think much of it, but recently they had made a similar discovery in the undergrounds of Baghdad, Iraq. The only difference, the one in the Vostok Mountains was much larger, and the mountains had a sphinx nearby. Yes, you heard me, a sphinx, just like the one by the Giza pyramids. So the US would work with Romania and they would both investigate the anomalies. And what they would find would change the course of history as we know it. As the teams approached the entrance in the side of the Vostok Mountains, something would activate. It was a large force field blocking the entrance. Shortly after, one of the US officials would get a call. The one in Baghdad activated as well. So when one activated, so did the other. Initially, 3 soldiers would try to walk through the force field, but they would die of a heart attack instantly. So the officials would have to take a different approach. In order to deactivate the force field, you had to reach a higher state of consciousness. It took quite some time to discover this, but eventually, many were able to do it. When they finally reached the dome inside the cavern, it also had a force field around it. They opened it the same way. In this, what they would later call the projection room, they would discover perfectly cut large tables and chairs, much too big for present-day humans. They would find over 30 ancient texts written on tablets. That when you slid your hand across them, almost as if a smartphone, they would display a holographic image of the origins of the Earth. Not only that, it displayed every creature that's ever inhabited the Earth and how they came to be. Another station would allow you to mix DNA of any 2 creatures on Earth, then produce a holographic image of what they would look like. The room would have 3 doors, one going to the Giza Sphinx, the other going to Mount Kailash in Tibet. The third is said to have gone to inner Earth. And that's not all. They would even find a large stone chair with what seemed to be attached to it a helmet. Right away, you could see that the helmet was much too large for the average human being. The chair was set for a human about 10 to 12 feet tall, and the helmet would fit the head of this human. They figure it was an automated system that would get you to the highest state of consciousness immediately. Eventually, they would discover that it actually allowed you to use your astral body to time travel. As they proceeded, the discoveries would become even more magnificent. Continue downstairs to a lower level. Here they would notice a pillar-shaped chest in the middle of the room. After figuring out how to unlock it, they opened the lid. They would notice a beautiful white light emanating from the chest. Inside was a white dense powder. This would become known as monoatomic gold. This substance would cause a lot of diplomatic tension due to the fact that when consumed, this stuff could make you live for 1,000 years. It is said to be known by locals as the place of the giants, since its discovery in 2002 by the Pentagon using geodesic satellite radar. They discovered large caverns cut right into the side of a mountain with no visible entrances at the surface. They were beings that seemed to have mastered technologies even more advanced than today's. The walls of these tunnels were smooth like polished marble. They start in the mountain at an even slope and then make a cut at a perfect 26-degree angle. This would lead up to a central room with a height of 30 meters tall and 100 meters wide. Lined up along both the left and the right walls were tables with a height of no less than 6 feet. On these tables were all types of ancient cuneiform writing, while there were some that were more familiar, like circles and triangles. On other tables, there seemed to be some sort of consoles with all sorts of cables coming out of them. These consoles could design holographic images based on scientific information. Welcome to the Vostok Mountains of Romania. So recently, one of my followers sent me a message and he had a very interesting story. He was just 14 years old as he was growing up in California. He grew up troubled and would eventually get involved in a gang. This would of course lead to gang violence that would soon spill over to his mother's home. So his mom, who worked 3 jobs, had had enough. She had to do something. She decided it would be good for him to learn a little bit about his heritage from Mexico. He would end up going to visit with his grandfather on his father's side. Little did he know, it would change his life. It just so happens that his grandfather lived near the 7 luminaries of Mexico. For those of you that don't know, the 7 luminaries of Mexico are large craters. These craters have been around for generations, and oddly enough, they perfectly mirror the Big Dipper. So many suspect they were actually created by extraterrestrial craft from ETs that hailed from the Big Dipper. And the stories surrounding these craters would say the same thing. He stated that while he was there, you could see UFOs every night. Not only that, you could hear things going on underground. His grandfather would tell him stories passed down from generation to generation. Some of them he even got to witness, like the fact that the craters can grow massive crops. It's rumored they can grow mangoes the size of basketballs, heads of lettuce a meter tall. His grandfather would tell him that the ancient higher beings would come down and see his ancestors. Sometimes they would come from the skies, sometimes they would come from underground. But a certain group in particular would tell them that they could solve world hunger, and they would go on to show them how. The secret is sacred, and it truly has not been shared, but it's said they taught them how to use the energy from the craters. Years ago, the government would catch wind of it, so they would send officials out. But the locals were reluctant to share their secrets, so the government officials would end up calling it a hoax. But trust me, it is no hoax, and the stories will blow your mind. The one that moved me the most will challenge everything you've ever learned about the Aztec, Incan, and Mayan civilizations. His grandfather would explain that it all started when a group of Spanish explorers would land on the coast of the Gulf of Mexico. The group would drop anchor and make their way to shore. When they first landed on the beach, they were greeted by a small fishing tribe that lived nearby. The Spanish sailors were in rough shape. They were starving and dehydrated. While the crew neared death, the only one that was in good health was the priest. As back then, they always took care of the priest before anybody. So while his men had one foot in the grave, he was in perfectly fine shape. The villagers would notice their condition and offer them help. Not only would they give them food and water, but they would heal them in a matter of minutes using an ancient technique learned from the higher beings. They would then take them to their village, which would be a mistake. Upon arrival, the crew was speechless. There was gold everywhere. Literally every building was covered. They had more gold than any of the men had ever laid their eyes on. Not only that, they seemed to have acquired technology. Tech acquired from the sky people. When asked where it came from, they pointed to the sky. The priest seemed unimpressed. Too, y'all. So after eating fruits and vegetables they had never eaten, foods they had never dreamed of, the vast amounts of gold, more gold than they had ever seen, they were absolutely amazed at how beautiful the little village was. But in the end, not even that took them back the most. When the villagers began showing their abilities. Abilities not just limited to their women and children being healers. After seeing all this, the priest grew worried. Later that night, when the conquistadors got back to their ship, he would immediately begin preparing for battle, telling the men that these abilities can never be shown to the world. So they must take out that village and any other surrounding in the morning. Little did they know the villagers were pretty smart people in themselves. So the chief would send a scout to watch the Spaniards. It wouldn't take him long to realize what was going on. He would turn and run back to the village, letting the chief know. The chief would tell him continue to the mother and father tribes, the Aztecs and the Mayans, warning them of the danger approaching. Upon hearing this, the Aztec emperor would send warriors to tell the Mayans. The Spanish would attack in the coming days. They would storm the village like madmen, ready to take out anything in their path. But as they approached, there were no warriors waiting. There was nobody ready for battle. They slowed the horses to a trot. The village was completely empty, gold and all. And when they made it to the Aztec and the Mayan empires, they were the same. No gold, no people. Empty. So his grandfather said what happened was, after finding out the Aztecs and the Mayans were visited by Mother Nature, creator of all, she would warn them of the fierce enemy at their doorstep. She would give each tribe a key and tell them to head south. So they would gather everything and flee to South America. Each tribe's emperor or leader, key in hand. When they finally come upon their destination, they know this is where they're supposed to be. Above is an example of what they looked for. When they saw this, each chief would slowly place the key in the puzzle. Instantly, they could hear mechanisms begin shifting within the wall. First, small intricate pieces moved, and then larger, until finally a large stone slab about 20 feet tall would shift out of their way. And what was revealed, absolutely mind-blowing. It would open up to a whole nother beautiful world. Standing right in front of them, a large portal. Mother Nature, creator of all, led them to a haven. At that moment, they'd tell their brave warriors they had to go back and to represent their tribes well. Here, they would die a warrior's death. The rest, elderly women and children, would enter the portal, from which they would never return. His grandfather states that he learned Mayans and Aztecs were love and light, that they were decent people and cared for one another, and that the people of his heritage have been misjudged the entire time, and that he hoped one day his story would be heard. Aztec and Mayan warriors would represent well and fight valiantly. A follower of mine's grandfather lived next to the 7 luminaries in Mexico. When he would go visit from Cali, he'd tell him about his ancestors. Some of the stories are crazy. I've been lucky enough he's actually been sharing them with me and telling me that I can share them with you. So I have been, and this is stuff you definitely want to hear. His grandfather stated that there's been 3 great wars on Earth. Wars of good against evil. He would state that the evil beings wanted to take Earth, and that during these times the world was highly technologically advanced, and many of the people were of a higher consciousness, including his ancestors, which I have reason to believe may have been the original Egyptians. Many years before the Third War of Good versus Evil, they knew it was coming. So the good higher beings of love and light, which his people would refer to as the Sky People, tasked his ancestors with traveling the globe and warning other human factions. So they would travel to China, Australia, Russia, Europe, all over the globe. So as they got to each location, they would warn the people of the impending battle. They would build relationships with them and teach them of love and light and how to harness the Earth's energy. They did this by building pyramids. Using sacred geometry taught to them by the sky people, they were able to build them mimicking the star constellations. They did this so at certain times throughout the year, when they lined up with their star constellation, they would harness that said star's energy. Not only that, they taught them how to harness the Earth's energy in themselves, their being. This made the people of the world in these times very powerful. They built such strong relationships at the locations that they went to, sometimes they would end up living there, or the people would end up coming back with them. This is why I believe they could have been the ancient Egyptians. They were a seafaring group that traveled the globe building pyramids. Makes sense. And what a lot of people don't know is the pyramids are actually earthquake proof. And if a nuclear blast occurs nearby, they'll sustain. Shortly after, around 10,000 BC, the battle would take place with the evil alien faction. They would hide the women and children in deep underground caverns that had seawater in them. Here, they would be protected by the allied sea creatures, which I believe could have been mermaids. While their warriors, known as Mexicanos, would join the good alien beings and fight this grave enemy. They would use super advanced technological weapons that could literally incinerate their enemy to a pile of ashes. They had super speed and agility. They were faster than anyone on the battlefield. They could also move things with their mind. They would pick up large boulders and toss them, smashing the evil beings. He would also say that at this time, man could talk to animals, and they were part of the battle too. Even Bigfoot, he would claim that Bigfoot and man once had a long-standing relationship, that Bigfoot has been around for millennia, and that they are here to protect the portals to inner Earth. So the battle would rage for 1,000 years, eventually good prevailing. But right after, the Ice Age would take place, due to nuclear fallout. So one of my followers who lives in Cali has a grandfather in Mexico. His grandfather lives next to the 7 luminaries in Mexico. These 7 craters are known for UFO activity. So when my guy went to stay with his grandfather for 9 months, he got to learn a lot about his heritage. And I'm gonna tell you, stick around, cause this shit, you don't hear every day. His grandfather said his ancestors had contact with the sky people. They would share secrets with his ancestors, making their lives on Earth easier. Here's some of the accounts from his father and his grandfather. He said they used to have gifts from the Earth in the dirt, water, and rocks. That they would rub a special dirt on them before hunts because it would completely camo them, almost invisible. That there was sand that you could roll through and you'd be fire resistant for 40 minutes to an hour. That ETs even showed his people a gooey type water. This water you could shape, and you could shape it to fit your head. It would allow you to stay underwater for 2 hours. Rocks that when crushed and rubbed on the bottom of your feet, would allow you to walk on water. Alright y'all, our boy Macho's back at it again, and just when I think his grandfather's accounts couldn't get any more interesting. The role his ancestors played were crucial to the victory in this third Earth War. In this last war, both evil and good beings would partake from all over the galaxy. The war would take place around 10,000 years ago, or right around the same time as the last Ice Age. Which actually makes sense because these advanced technological beings probably had some sort of super weapon that could create a sort of fallout or a Ice Age-like event. They would state that the third war, just like the previous two, would last up to 1,000 years. Like I said, these battles are epic and they last a very long time. Now, I want you to pay attention to what I'm saying here, because this is important. It is said that many years before the Third Great War, his people knew it was coming. So his ancestors would task their greatest warriors, known as the Mexicanos. They were tasked with traveling the globe and warning every faction of mankind of what was to come. His people would travel to China, Russia, Africa, Australia, you name it, they traveled there, not only to warn them, but to also enlighten them on their teachings that they learned from the sky people. This would make a huge difference in the coming war because they were teaching solidarity. And they were explaining to the people that we need to unite as one faction to defeat this grave enemy. Now the enemy, you ask? It's the Alpha Draconians. They would teach Mother Earth's people how to build massive pyramids that could harness the Earth's energy. This would in turn lead to longer lifespans for people so they could grow wiser and prepare that much better. In doing this, his people would build strong relationships worldwide. Some of the different peoples would come home with them, while in some cases his people stayed. And due to this world brotherhood that was built, none of the women and children had to see any of the war. Every last one of them from each human faction was spared. They were actually kept safe by the most trusted sea life. They were taken to giant underwater caves that had massive pockets of air that allowed them to stay there for years at a time. There, they would be protected by some of the most ancient beings on Earth, mermaids. See, it was important to protect the women because they were the birthers of children. They were the creators of future generations. And it was very important to keep the children safe because they were the minds of the future, just in case anything terrible happened. See, women and children were particularly targeted by the Dracos. The women because they wanted what was inside their stomachs for creating life. They wanted to manipulate our DNA, and the children for consumption only. And once they had structures that would withstand massive earthquakes and explosions, aka the pyramids, shortly after, the Third Great Earth War ensued, and battle covered the entirety of the planet. Both good alien factions of light and evil alien factions. The display of technology was something like we can't even fathom today. Many of us would almost call it magic, but it wasn't. It was real. The Mexicanos, our man's warrior ancestors, played a very large and important part in the war. Their skills were like nothing we'd ever seen today. They could literally pick up large boulders with their minds and crush their opponent. The weapons they wielded had amazing abilities. They would literally incinerate the Alpha Draconians on the spot, reducing them to nothing but a pile of ashes. Spear and shield that were almost mythological. This epic battle would go on for 1,000 years until finally the Alpha Draconians would fall. They would be pushed back to the underground tunnels, where they would immediately begin plotting for the next war. But this time they would take a different approach. They would infiltrate mankind. From the highest position of kings to politicians who ruled the world. And many think this war is pending as we speak. Now, if those of you that listened, did you catch that his ancestors traveled the world and built pyramids? This makes one kind of wonder, could they have been the original ancient Egyptians? Now that we're finding pyramids all over the world, it's kind of up in the air as far as who and where the ancient Egyptians began or started. Of the places I named, all of them had pyramids, even Australia. It makes one think.
I may have just found something on Google Earth that could change our history as we know it. That, along with my theory as to why it might actually be there. Now, I rarely share my Google Earth finds publicly or make videos about them. But those that follow me know I am a Google Earth enthusiast. Recently, I found something. That's what I love about it. There's always something new to find. All kinds of different things. In all, it's been an awesome adventure, to say the least. I've loved Google Earthing. Now, some people don't, for some reason, give Google Earth validity. I don't understand why, because ultimately it is a satellite image of the surface of our planet. Its integrity is there. I don't see where, when you find things on Google Earth, people don't seem to want to validate them. Because in all, it's a pretty much CIA satellite that is taking these pictures. So it's the pictures of the landmass as it is. Today, I want to show you one that is ultimately very intriguing, potentially a game changer as far as what religion is and the history of it as we know it. You consider Google Earth a valid source. I actually found this when I was showing a buddy pictures of Google Earth on my TV. We kind of both noticed it and we looked at it and we were like, that looks like writing. What does it say? It clicked right away. We couldn't believe what it said. It's underwater, meaning that the history of it is somewhat up in the air, but it could be pre-Great Flood. And what's more baffling about it is the sheer size of it. It is huge. So I'm gonna play the footage and take you to where I found it. And hopefully you guys can see what I saw pretty quickly. It's near the north, obviously. And there you have it. Right there. There it is.
and it runs all the way over here, and then there's a little something after it, and there's actually something to the right of that. It's pretty mind-blowing. At first, I'm going to leave this up for a second, let you see if you all can figure it out. But to me, it looks like a C, H, and then a Y, T. If you haven't guessed it, it looks as though somebody wrote Christianity in cursive in the land. Here's a photo of it with the color shaded and darkened and enhanced. It looks pretty blatant. Christianity. Now, if this is true and it does check out, can you imagine the implications of this? It is actually written in the depths of the ocean, on the ocean floor. That means it had to have been written prior to the Great Flood, at least, possibly earlier. So we're talking ancient civilizations knew about and practiced the religion of Christianity. And guys, that's not even the best part. Look at right here. Do you notice something? Dark? Possible eye, nose, mouth? Thorned crown? Is that something depicting Jesus? Again, a more enhanced photograph. If you block this, brow, eye, nose, mouth, thorned crown. And guys, the sheer size of this is amazing. It'll blow your mind. So here's a picture of the length of the entire script of writing. 91,000 meters, or almost 60 miles in length. 60 miles, fam. And there's the height. 13,000 meters, or close to 5 miles in height. It's almost as if whoever did it, or whatever entity did it, they were doing it for the skies. And I hate to speculate too much, but I'm inclined to believe it wasn't normal-sized humans that did this task. It had to have been something huge. And there's some writing right here as well, just above what looks like Jesus' face. It looks just above his head. It might say 128. And I looked up, it's Psalms 128. And here's me outlining the Jesus face or sculpture, whatever it may be, just so you can see. So now my theory as to why it might be there. So one day I was actually Google Earthing on Mars. And you can kind of see some stuff on Mars. Some of it doesn't come in that well, but a lot of the structures you could see. One day, I was going through the surface of Mars, and I actually found what I believed was a cross. And this cross actually possibly had a being tied to it. So I got to thinking, what if there was a previous civilization on Mars before it turned into this red planet? And what if they had a Messiah-like situation? Literally the same scenario we had here. So is it possible that previous civilizations had Messiah-like events that took place similar to ours? And then they were also reset by some cataclysmic event or some great flood. So that's why you're seeing this Christianity and Jesus on the ocean floor. What if a previous civilization had the same type of occurrence take place, be it by God or whoever, that every civilization, every generation of man has the same event take place in order to establish a set of behavior or some sort of way of life, that those in control, God or whoever, maybe send a human here and they unlock certain portions of our DNA before they do it. So this being or this person seems all powerful and has all these abilities that we could have if the human potential is there, but we don't. So we treat him like he's this higher Messiah. And then he's then sacrificed to die for our sins so that we can go on and live normal lives or a life of a certain behavior. I don't know. It's just a theory. Like I say, don't, quote me or don't take it to heart, but just a thought of mine. Let me know what you guys think. Because at the end of the day, that looks like Christianity, Jesus on the ocean floor before a great flood.
How? It's the scripture that starts, "Blessed is everyone that feareth the Lord, that walketh in his ways." So it's a generally popular scripture. Now, of course, this is just all speculation. It looks like what it looks like. You guys saw the coordinates. If you want to go check it out for yourself, check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. The following story comes from this book, Introduction to the Alien Races, Russia's Secret Book. Upon their official discovery of extraterrestrials in 1946, Russia established a team. This team consisted of investigators from the KGB to Russian diplomats. And whatever they may encounter, they were to put in this book. This book of alien races is both an instruction manual and a source of information to be used for now and in the future until the day it will be needed no more. Learn from it, add to it. Says you are forbidden of showing this book to anyone, talking about the book to anyone, talking about or revealing your investigative activities to anyone, drinking alcohol on and off duty, consuming drugs on and off duty, helping alien races no matter the situation or request, choosing sides when physically amongst different alien races or during investigation, and of engaging in sexual activities with any of the members of the alien race. So they made it pretty clear as to what they wanted. This could be comparable to Project Blue Book in the US Air Force back in the 50s. The contents of this book, mind-blowing. The first account of an alien encounter referenced in this book had me hooked. I couldn't put it down. Warning, discretion advised. In 1924, near Yekaterinslav, Ukraine, the 3 daughters of a Russian captain named Andreyachuk simply vanished. The captain was of Russian descent and very little was known about him, except for that he traveled a lot. A neighboring farmer said that one late night, early morning, as he was beginning his chores, he saw the captain's daughters walking into the woods about 2 hours before sunrise. Thinking it odd as he had never seen them do this before, the concerned farmer followed them into the woods. He would follow them at a distance, and after walking about 30 minutes or so, he described seeing purple and red lights and a mist through the trees. He got closer and saw all 3 of the captain's daughters entering what he described as a windmill-like plane. He also described seeing 5 creatures as small as the children, but with much older faces. They escorted the girls onto the ship, then closed the hatch and took off into the sky. It ascended at a rate that seemed to be extra slow, until finally he said the ship disappeared among the stars. According to the farmer, he then ran back to the captain's house to inform him of what happened. This is said to be an authentic picture of the captain's farmhouse. He arrived at the homestead and began frantically knocking on the door, but no one answered. So eventually he let himself in. He found the captain and his wife lifeless on their bed. Their faces, he explained, were peaceful, as if they had passed in their sleep. He'd find all their animals, 3 dogs, 1 horse, and 2 goats, deceased as well. On the kitchen table, there was a letter or a note, not signed, but they believed the handwriting matched one of the daughters, Sophia. The note read, "We are going to school in the moon with our friends." It's unverified, but it's believed this picture is of Sophia. The 3 daughters were never heard from or seen again. So what's the history behind this Russian alien races book? In 2004, the guy who was writing all this and putting it all together became friends with a Ukrainian guy called Petro that he met completely randomly at a bar by the beach. At this time, our narrator was on holiday and Petro actually just lived in the area. Well, they hit it off. They became really good friends and they started hanging out with each other's families. In 2008, Petro asked our guy if he would go on vacation with him back to his hometown. He wanted to go just south of Spain to visit his brother in jail, and if he had time, he wanted to go visit his father in Portugal. And though he now resided in Portugal, his father used to be a diplomat for Ukraine. He just moved to Portugal upon retirement. And so they went. They visited his brother and his father. And while they were at his friend Petro's father's home, the father asked him and Petro if they would help him move some boxes out of a room so he could make it a guest bedroom. Like, follow, subscribe. So he and Petro agreed, thinking it couldn't really be that bad. They walk in there and there's 58 boxes full of documents. They kind of look at each other and begin working. But of course, as they're moving boxes around, they're checking out the documents, Petro's translating them, and they realize just how cool these documents are. Most of the information is top secret, some of it probably never shared. So they end up asking Petro's father if they can have it. He says yes. They rent a van, and they load it up with the boxes, take them home. For the next year or so, every weekend, him and Petro would organize these boxes. They would find all kinds of intriguing top secret information. Then one day, they would stumble upon this, the top secret Russian alien races book. The copy would look almost brand new, so they questioned the authenticity until they found a cover that was dated 1951.
See, Petrol's father had been keeping it updated and renewing it. His friends would send him the information, and he would keep the text all up to date. About a year after finding it, Petrol calls his father and asks him about it, and he fills them in. He said he had received the book years before from one of his diplomat friends, and had been updating it till recently with information from a number of different sources. They would either call him, email him, or send it in the mail, or they'd just meet up to talk about old times. To this day, he gets regular updates and passes them on to our narrator. Apparently, throughout the book, some of the illustrations are some that we've seen in movies or video games today. At first, it was a red flag, but it turns out that the movies and media were actually getting their imagery from this book. Same goes for the video games, etc. They get their ideas and alien depictions from this book. Even the Independence Day alien sourced this. At one point in time in the 1980s, the KGB would find one in a field. Apparently, they had friends in the media, so they sold a lot of the content to them. This is why you'll see some of these aliens depicted on certain things, like video games, Mass Effect being a more popular one. They're trying to soften us up for when aliens actually do live beside us. So if you were going to partake in the building of this book, the rules were strict. Russian equivalent to CIA agents were told that if they lose it, they could get their immediate family killed. Only speak about it to your superior in charge. Rules when with humans. Investigate events, interrogate witnesses, gather physical evidence. When with aliens, engage with them, follow them, learn from them. You are forbidden of showing this book to anyone, talking about it to anyone, talking about it or revealing your investigative activities to anyone, drinking alcohol on and off duty, consuming drugs on and off duty, helping alien races no matter the situation or request, choosing sides when physically amongst different alien races or during investigations, and of engaging in sexual activities with them. That means interbreeding between humans and aliens must have happened at some point. So I'm not going to cover every alien in this book. I'm only going to cover the ones that are important. The Kurs, aka gods of the land. I think they could have been ant people. Believed to be related to the race Anunnaki. They come from the planet Dilemans. They are the race behind the story of the Enlil and Ninlil. They were directly involved with the development of our race in the early stages. After centuries away from Earth, they are now coming back. Their own leader is here right now, and they plan on staying permanently. This race is said to be the race that is always bathing in a liquid like gold, monoatomic gold. They say they get longevity out of it. The Havhanu Kondras. They come from the galaxy Sexton's dwarf SPH. First visited Earth in 934 AD in the area we know now as Romania. They often abduct and kill humans. They also drain and drink the blood, even indulging in animals as well. This race is solely responsible for the myth of vampires. Several governments know and accept their actions. The human bodies that they use are never returned. Their last sighting was in Scotland in 1996. Next, we have the Anunnaki. This is the only time I've ever seen it spelt like that. Anunnaki, aka Anunnaki. They come from planet Nibiru, and their planet is part of the same solar system as ours. But contrary to the popular belief that their orbit is every 3,500 years, it's actually every 4,000. Now this is where I wasn't sure, but they reference the Anunnaki as looking like us, except they were 8 feet or taller and muscular. When they first got to Earth, there was actually other beings here, some of them malevolent with supernatural powers. The Anunnaki defeated them and became the most powerful race on the planet. They would end up developing the most intelligent, non-alien species on Earth, in order to have a race for slaves at their disposal. At the time, Samael and Lilith were the Anunnaki king and queen. They were not aware of the presence of reptilians on Earth. They would only cooperate with one other race, the Zeta Reticuli. Has an alien satellite planted by the Anunnaki been acting as an all-seeing eye since before the Great Flood? According to many theorists, yes, and they refer to it as the Black Knight satellite. Although Nikola Tesla's inventions changed the way people live today, back in 1899, his peers viewed him as an eccentric and somewhat of a mad scientist, especially when he built a laboratory and a 210-foot tower in Colorado Springs in order to experiment with electricity and record electromagnetic disturbances. His colleagues did not take him seriously, but it wasn't long after he fired it up that he reported he had received signals from extraterrestrials. The newspapers of the day mocked him. But despite the ridicule of his peers, Tesla was excited about the signals he had received, and he came to fervently believe that he had been the first to hear the greeting of one planet to another. At the time, not knowing any better, he believed those electrical signals were from Mars, but researchers now believe that the signals Tesla received actually came from the Black Knight satellite. After Tesla's discovery of the mysterious signals, they would go undetected until the 1930s, when a few astronomers had received them. But it wasn't until 1954 when the St. Louis Dispatch ran an article titled "Artificial Satellites Are Circling Earth." Writer on Saucers wrote about unidentified satellites orbiting Earth. He claimed the government knew about them and was trying to discover their source. The referenced writer was Donald E. Kehoe. Kehoe later wrote Aliens in Space, the real story of unidentified flying objects, where he documented his knowledge of UFOs, including what he knew about the Black Knight satellite. It's believed that in 1953, a professor at the University of New Mexico saw a blip of unknown origin. In 1957, Luis Carolus, with the Communications Ministry in Venezuela, was taking pictures of the Russian satellite Sputnik 2 as it passed over Caracas. The Black Knight showed up in his photographs. This was the first known actual picture of the object. In 1960, an American satellite showed the object following Sputnik 1, which was still orbiting Earth. The satellite was in polar orbit, and neither the US nor Russia at the time had the technology to achieve this feat. The object also appeared to be much larger and heavier than anything either country could launch. Then in the 1960s, Time magazine, as well as other news publications, reported on the Black Knight and referred to it as possibly having an extraterrestrial origin. Of course, shortly after, the US government printed an article stating that they saw debris from the Discoverer satellite they had recently launched. Then just 3 years later, NASA astronaut Gordon Cooper claimed to have seen a UFO while in orbit. This claim was also backed by at least 100 employees from a NASA space station in Australia at the time. And though NASA refuted what he saw, Gordo stood by his claim until the day he died in 2004. For the next 10 years, the Black Knight satellite would continue its polar orbit unhindered. That was until 1973, when a Scottish astronomy and science fiction author, Duncan Lunan, wrote that he had identified and deciphered a hidden radio message in outer space radio emissions that predate human existence in outer space. Lunar claimed the message deciphered as follows: "Start here. Our home is in the Epsilon Boötis, which is a double star. We live on the sixth planet of 7, coming from the sun, which is the larger of the two. Our sixth planet has 1 moon. Our fourth planet has 3. Our first and third planets each have 1. Our probe is in the position of Arcturus, known in our maps." And I don't know about you guys, but I've caught myself staring at this constellation in particular often and wondered what the origins were. I just always remember thinking of it as a slightly crooked kite. Very unique, and it stands out quite obviously. And what's more fascinating about this, in the ancient Sumerian tablets that tell the book of Enki and Enlil, who were Mesopotamian gods often referenced as Akhenaten or Ramses II, and believed to be of Anunnaki royalty, were also brothers and were said to be the creators of humanity. But according to these tablets, when Enlil left humanity to Earth, he left an all-seeing eye. This was so he could monitor mankind and watch over us, and watch the planet as we develop and grow. So according to theorist Billy Carson, this is the Black Knight satellite. It's actually an Anunnaki all-seeing eye. A satellite so advanced, it has a polar orbit, and it can read anything, anytime, from population dispersion to the depth of the ocean to seismic activity and weather. And what's even more fascinating about these tablets is they say that Enlil actually owns the constellation Epsilon Boötis, and that he resides on one of those planets within that constellation watching over us to this day. Pretty interesting how well it matches up with Lunan's original deciphering of the code Black Knight satellite originally sent to him back in 1973. Now what's more fascinating yet is the fact that it sends its signals in binary code. They know this because the government has figured out a way to communicate with the satellite. Nobody really knows the nature of their communication, but it is proven that yes, they have figured out how to communicate with this satellite. And just wrap your head around that for a second. Binary code from a satellite that's supposedly 13,000 years old, that's mind-blowing. Some even say this thing could be older. It could be in the hundreds of thousands of years old. Going even further, some believe it could even be an earlier, more advanced human civilization that placed it into orbit. So you're probably asking, why haven't we shot it down? Why haven't we tried to board it? Or why haven't we tried to actually capture the satellite? Well, that's because the government's afraid of any defense mechanisms it has in place or types of weaponry that could emit from it. If, say, they do try to board it, for all they know, they could shoot it down and it could spread a contagion or totally annihilate society. Do we try and actually do something with it? Then there's the obvious one that if you shoot it down, are you going to alert the aliens that put it into orbit? Are you going to anger them? Are they going to attack if you take out their satellite? Or are you going to alert some species from way out into the cosmos? There's a lot that goes on with actually taking out the satellite or capturing it. That's why the government is avoiding it at all costs. And I have a theory that what if the government has figured out how to tap into this satellite and use its imagery? Now, it wasn't long ago that the CIA gave Google Earth to Google. Could they be using this satellite as their Google Earth satellite if they had tapped into it? Because I don't know how many satellites can actually see to the depths of the oceans, can actually see what's at the bottom of the oceans. I'm not sure we have technology advanced enough to do that, but this just may. Just a theory. Nevertheless, the Black Knight satellite has baffled scientists and the scientific community for the last century. Who knows, maybe someday the government will let out what it exactly is, because I believe they know. But until then, we can only speculate. What do you think it is? Do you think it's a earlier civilization of humankind, extraterrestrial, Anunnaki? Let me know in the comments. This is the story of a Lemurian princess who emerged from inner Earth and shared the secrets of the subterranean cities. Her name, Sharula Dux, and her parents were the king and queen of Telos. The princess left her home in the capital city of Agartha to come to the surface and teach humanity about the higher truths they've been practicing and living for thousands of years. Whether you believe it or not, her story will leave you amazed and inspired. When you hear how a Telosian lives his or her life in inner Earth, it'll make you rethink everything you ever learned on the surface. So don't go away. You don't want to miss out on this one. The tale of inner Earth began almost 100,000 years ago when the people of Hyperborea had to vacate their continent. The Hyperboreans had to relocate because Mother Earth started losing her mantle, which opened up the planet to radioactive waves, the likes of which their civilization that had reigned for millions of years had never seen before. So nearing the point of extinction, they were forced to move underground, where they still thrive to this day. Flash forward to almost 65,000 years later. The radioactivity has ceased and the Earth is now inhabited by the Anunnaki, Atlanteans, and Lemurians. How they all came to be on Earth? The Anunnaki, who inhabit planet Nibiru, are also the Draconian race. They are a warring faction, always looking to conquer. Their 3,000-year orbit brought them near our solar system, and also planet Tiamat. An ancient alien race known as the Agigi called this planet home. They were highly technologically advanced and had a thriving civilization. Their technology was thousands and thousands of years ahead of what ours is today. They could do and accomplish things you and I couldn't even fathom, using things like sacred geometry. But unfortunately, they caught the eye of the ancient Anunnaki. So they set out to conquer planet Tiamat and take the Agigi as slaves. The Agigi, who were inherently beings of light, fought valiantly and gave it everything they had. But in the end, they stood no chance against the Anunnaki's planet-killing weapon. And after gathering up enough Agigi to do their bidding and be slaves for them on Earth, using direct energy weapons, they created a Death Star-like scenario for planet Tiamat, blowing it to smithereens. The end result is what we now call the asteroid belt. Why the Anunnaki wanted to enslave the Agigi is because they had ruined the atmosphere on their own planet, resulting from nuclear war. Though it was still habitable, their planet was suffering, and so was their civilization. So they invented a machine that could break down gold into its monoatomic form. They'd then fire the broken down gold into their atmosphere in hopes that it would regenerate it. This process took tonnage of gold to complete. So they needed literally mountains of it. And where did they find a good source of gold? On Earth. So the Anunnaki used this ancient advanced super civilization in the Agigi as slaves to harvest gold. This went on for thousands of years until the Igigi grew tired of it. They'd revolt, gaining their freedom. Shortly after gaining their freedom, the Igigi split into two different factions so they could spread their love and light across the globe. One became the Lemurians, the other the Atlanteans. The Lemurians inhabiting Lemuria or continent Mu, the Atlanteans Atlantis. In the meantime, the Anunnaki were still allowed to harvest gold. That's when they created humans. And for a few more thousand years, we were the slaves working the gold mines. During this time, the Anunnaki were able to infiltrate the Atlantean society, convincing them that lesser beings should be slaves and that it was their right to rule over them. So they forced us to do backbreaking labor for millennia, until the Lemurians had had enough. They spoke up. They believed that all beings on Earth had an equal right to attempt to thrive and evolve as a species, while the Atlanteans and Anunnaki did not. A war broke out. Flash forward to almost 65,000 years later. The radioactivity has ceased, and the Earth is now inhabited by the Anunnaki, Atlanteans, and Lemurians. How they all came to be on Earth? The Anunnaki, who inhabit planet Nibiru, are also the Draconian race. They are a warring faction, always looking to conquer. Their 3,000-year orbit brought them near our solar system. So the third great antediluvian Earth War started. Antediluvian meaning before the biblical flood. The war between the two sides broke out over differing ideologies of enslaving lesser beings on Earth. The Draconian Anunnaki and the Atlanteans against the Lemurians and all the other beings of Earth. During these series of wars, thermonuclear devices were used. It ended up being the greatest Earth war this planet had ever seen. When the fighting had stopped and all the dust had cleared, the Atlanteans and Lemurians realized there really was no winner in this battle. The Australian outback, the Gobi Desert, the Mojave, and the Sahara are all reminders of what nuclear war on Earth can result in. During the conflict, what were supposed to be super advanced civilizations stooped to low levels, realizing they became victims of their own aggression and that such behavior was futile to their species. But it must be pointed out that at the end of the day, you and I are not slaves. The war raged on 10,000 years before the fighting finally stopped. But the damage from the nukes was irreversible. Cataclysms would ensue. By the time the second set of earthquakes, cataclysms, volcanoes ravaged the Earth, Mu and Atlantis had been broken down to just mere island chains. They could tell simply by the Earth's frequency that their continents had maybe 15,000 years before they'd sink to the bottom of the ocean. I know 15,000 years seems like a long time, but to the Atlanteans and Lemurians, it's nothing. Their people could live to be up to 30,000 years old. So they realized a large number that took part in the war would see the end of its destruction. It turns out their prediction would be spot on. Almost 15,000 years later, 200 years before Atlantis sunk, Lemuria would sink to the bottom of the ocean. But not before Lemurians and Atlanteans petitioned Shambhala the Lesser. Shambhala the Lesser would allow the Lemurians in, and some Atlanteans who were inherently good were allowed in as well. The ones of love and light. Now a few of the evil Anunnaki and Atlanteans stayed on Earth, while the majority flew off planet. In the meantime, the good factions would have to find their place in Shambhala the Lesser. So Mount Shasta, California would be where the Lemurians decided to make their homeland. During this time, before Lemuria sank, California was actually a part of its colonies. They were part of the Lemurian homelands. Lemurians chose Mount Shasta because they knew it would survive the cataclysms. And Telos was actually the name of that area. It covered much of the southwest of California. Mount Shasta already being a place of great sacredness. Telos meant communication with spirit, oneness with spirit, and understanding of spirit. They built it to hold up to 2 million people, but by the time the cataclysms hit, only 25,000 were saved. And at this time, they had already established many of the temples and pyramids within Mount Shasta, so they were able to save all of the Lemurian records. While Lemuria was coping with the aftermath of what happened, earthquakes continued. These earthquakes were so intense that just the sound alone could end your life. And when Lemuria finally sank, they got even more intense. Many believe they would have reached up to 15 on our Richter scale today. Civilizations across the world that were built on mostly clay, their earthquakes were so intense that it actually liquefied the clay, sinking whole cities. When a continent sinks, it affects the entirety of the world. When Lemuria finally gave away and sank to the bottom of the ocean, it created one of the most massive tidal waves the world has ever seen. In many areas, the water didn't reach just hundreds of miles inland, but thousands of miles inland. Meaning that if one hit the coast of California, it would go as far as Oklahoma City. This is why they tried to construct all the major cities before Lemuria herself sank. and they were able to get much of it done, including the Great Pyramid of Egypt. This was ordered to be done by the Lemuria high priest, known better today as Egyptian god Thoth or Thoth, the god of wisdom, knowledge, and science, believed to have brought the world sacred geometry. This pyramid was built to house the records of the Atlanteans, Lemurians, Hyperboreans, or any other civilization that reached great stature on the planet Earth. Again, the Atlanteans that were inherently good were allowed to build a city as well, the ones that fought alongside the Lemurians. They moved in just as Lemuria sank, and for the next 200 years, large portions of Atlantis would sink as well. Earthquakes would continue for 2,000 more years, reducing almost every civilization on Earth to rubble. The Atlanteans chose to build their city under Mato Grosso, which is now much of Brazil. The few civilizations that stayed on the surface would lose their technology rapidly, because volcanic ash would blot out the sun. The volcanic eruptions and the nuclear explosions threw so much debris in the air, it didn't become daylight till almost 300 years after Atlantis sank. This would cause many of the plant and animal life forms on Earth to go extinct. Both plants and animals that existed during Lemurian and Atlantean times do not exist today. Of course, there were a few that did survive, along with some human civilizations as well. These people saw terrible suffering. They were rampant with hunger and disease. Many moved out of the large cities into the country in fear that a building could collapse at any moment. Even some of their strongest buildings could only withstand 300 to 400 earthquakes. Then it was inevitable. They would fall. Some that did survive were the pyramids, because they were built to withstand the earthquakes, and because they were constructed using sacred geometry. So civilizations on the surface would survive as best they could. During this time, there was a large integration into the Agartha network. The Agartha network is made up of over 120 subterranean cities. City of Telos is the capital of it, near Mount Shasta. Some of them were built during the Shambhala the Lesser times, when the Hyperboreans first established underground cities. These beings were 12 feet tall. In fact, this planet, along with many other planets in the solar system, had humanoid species this height. When we lost the mantle and started reaching more and more rays from the sun, man shrunk. We went from an average of 12 feet to 7 feet. So the Lemurians and Atlanteans were on average 7 to 8 feet. And we still continued to shrink for thousands of years, as many people throughout history were only 5 feet tall. Now people average around 6 feet tall. So essentially this effect has started to reverse itself, and we're getting the height back that we once had. In the Agartha network, the only cities allowed to join were cities of light. Aside from the capital, there are 4 more cities, with Lemurian technology and Lemurian beliefs. One is called Rama, underneath India. The others that hold allegiance to the Lemurians are called the Ulgar cities. One of them is the city of Shonshi, which is under Tibet, and is being protected and hidden by a Tibetan lamasery. The Ulgar people left Lemuria 40 to 50,000 years ago and split off into their own faction. They covered most of the area of Asia. These people inhabited the second Ulgar city, Shingla, and this is located under the Gobi Desert. The last city is built above the Atlantean city, and they call this Pozdid. The Atlantean city under Mato Grosso Plateau in Brazil consists of many other larger cities around it, some of them going under the Atlantic Ocean. And there's many small satellite cities that cover the entirety of the planet. That's basically how all these advanced civilizations ended up underground. This is where the princess starts explaining how they live, from their relationships to their family dynamics, to their diets and their wildlife. Comment below what you think of these stories, and like, subscribe, and follow for more. So before the ancient Aztecs and Mayans were forced underground by the Spanish, the ancestors were very familiar with the ancient alien sky people. It is said because the aliens knew that they were love and light, they gave them tools and helped guide them through history. This is how they were able to build such beautiful temples, and also carve such elaborate depictions of their society in hardened stone. My good friend's grandfather told him that around the last ice age, his people were guided by Mother Nature. They were told to walk across the ice and snow to the north until they saw an eagle with a snake on a cactus, and this is where they should establish their empire. And so they did, and they were assisted and given benefits of Mother Earth herself. He would say that they worked closely with the ancient sky people throughout their history, hence their knowledge in mathematics, geometry, trigonometry. And every year around the same time, the sky people would show back up and spend time with the ancient civilizations. They would have celebrations and good times together, intermingling species. These were times of great celebration and prosperity. It was always sad when the ETs had to go home. Now some of the following pictures that I'm going to show you could possibly be Aztec or Mayan. Like the one behind me, this isn't 100% verified. They were said to have been found in the temples, but put away and hid from the public. Side note, these temples were so elaborate and so well built that their toilets still work to this day. This is one you can see. The little ETs, probably from the Zeta Reticuli system, were surrounding an Aztec. A follower sent these to me and I was absolutely amazed. Again, I'm not 100% sure if they're authentic, but boy, they look pretty real to me. Here's another one where an Aztec native is almost dressed like an Anunnaki god, holding a small ET. You can see these statues are pretty good size. Look at the 5-gallon bucket. Notice the ET holds an Aztec warrior, and look at his eyes. These are no doubt very unique depictions and carvings. Again, whether authentic, I cannot say, but they look pretty legit. This one reminds me of the Alien and Alien vs Predator. Notice the Predator-like face and the elongated back skull. And last but not least, check out these eyes. Amazing work. If these are fakes, they are awesome. Also, notice the extraterrestrial craft. Do me a solid after this and go look up War of the Worlds. Their craft were very similar to those. In all, these statues absolutely blew my mind. Very cool. All of this was prior to the Great Flood. At the time, a number of different races inhabited all different parts of Earth, from hybrids like the Chimera to even Atlanteans and Lemurians. My buddy's grandfather would say that everybody was vibing at a higher frequency. That at this amazing time in history, Bigfoots and humans coexisted and did so well. They were able to communicate and even fought wars together. Yes, not only did multiple species coexist, but they thrived on this planet as a result. But it wasn't always peace on Earth. Throughout history, Bigfoot fought alongside man in 3 galactic wars. What people don't understand today, but they did at one time, is Bigfoot is a very old being. He has been around for millennia. He has seen many humans come and go from Earth, assisted them and helped them in ways, but also like they are with us, they've eluded them as well. So Bigfoot, yes, vibes at a higher frequency than we do. They're able to travel in and out of the Earth portals. And unlike what people think, they're actually very intellectual beings. They are generally kind-hearted and docile, but that could change in an instant. They just mostly like to keep to themselves and are peace-loving creatures. They are so satisfied in their existence that they'd rather just forage and live off the land, in total tranquility amongst themselves. But if you do happen to come across one, that means you could be close to an Earth portal. That is their sole purpose on the surface of this planet, to protect the stargates. His grandfather would state that if you come across a Sasquatch, you might actually be very close to one of these portals. But be very careful while approaching, because if they sense evil on you, they may just attack. Bigfoots are very good at reading auras and reading overall heart chakras. If they sense any evil aura on you at all, they will never let you pass through that portal, because they know the powers there are too great to use in a negative way. But on the flip side, if they sense all good and all love and light, then they might actually even let you through them. There's a good chance they will. Could you imagine vibing out with some Sasquatches, walking through a group of them to a Stargate? Unfortunately, throughout history, much like the giants, Sasquatch has been really misunderstood. Now I know for a fact, just by the way Sasquatches avoid people, they are inherently good. They truly mean us no harm. It makes one wonder, could the giants be the same way? Could they be docile and decent? And maybe we're the aggressors? Maybe they're actually here for us. Maybe they're here to help in our 5th dimension awakening. But both parties, Sasquatch included, have had evil beings in the past. Only time will tell at the end of the day. So the most common question is, why haven't we found any bones? Or really any hard physical evidence? Well, why hasn't there been any real physical evidence is people's main argument? That's because Bigfoot is intelligent and aware enough to hide themselves. In other words, they cover their tracks. And the reason we haven't found any skeletal structures or bones left from Bigfoot, that's because Bigfoot actually takes care of their dead. My theory, since yes, we really haven't dug anything up archaeologically or anything like that, is that they actually take their dead back through the portals for burial. Yes, they are that intelligent.
They actually even mourn their dead, and even at a level that's comparable to mankind's. They are very family oriented and have a tight-knit clan. They stick together and have each other's backs. And hopefully someday we can get back to what we were with them pre-flood and coexist, maybe even communicate. Cause I'll tell you what, if any type of galactic war takes place, I want these guys on my side. And that goes for the Giants too. I don't want to fight them. I'd rather have them on my team. And this leads into my next question. How do we know the Giants are actually evil? There are many contradicting theories with this. Many go by the Bible, but the Bible has been rewritten. Are we sure that these Giants weren't put here to help mankind in our ascension to 5D? And that it couldn't possibly be a certain group that doesn't have the population's best interest at heart? They're using resources and military power to not only kill these beings, but to capture them and hold them hostage. Last year, 2020, they started training soldiers to fight underground. This is said to be when the Giants began waking up from their 30,000-year stasis, breaking free from their crystal chambers. As the public, we'd really never know. We're just kind of listening to what other people are saying, not seeing for ourselves. I understand that in the Bible they were man-eaters, and the result of the fallen, laying with man's daughters. But there are tales where giants were the heroes of old, that they fought off monsters and creatures threatening mankind. Corey Good states that yes, some are evil, but mostly they are good. He's a whistleblower that said he was part of the secret space program since the 80s. While professional Steve Quayle says he believes the Bible, that they are all inherently evil. But based on my research, and based on Admiral Richard Byrd's account, where his radio men coexisted and actually mingled and ate dinner with the Giants, stating that they're one of the most gentle creatures he's ever been around, I question the claim that they're all evil. I do not think they are. In fact, could someone or some group be manipulating Giants to hate man? Could they be torturing them? Could they be feeding them the fuel needed to attack? I'd say it's a question worth asking. What do you think? Is there really an Egyptian Sphinx in the Ozarks of Arkansas? Located on Highway 23, just north of Lamar, on Johnson County Road, is Arkansas's Ozark rendition of the Egyptian Sphinx. Right off the highway is a quarter-mile long trail, and it leads hikers half a mile straight to the Sphinx. The only thing is, the hike is straight uphill. As you can see, it's a very unique anomaly. After much research, I really couldn't find anything on it. But then I figured out Arkansas's officials actually think it was created by Mother Nature, that it was natural. But I beg to differ. Do me a solid and take a close look here. What do you see? Head? Mouth? Eyes? To me, that's a blatant reptile or dinosaur head. Here's another figure I know. There's something sinister below the Denver International Airport. Around a year ago, a gentleman named Mark was hired by the DIA to work on its concourse train system. At the time of his hiring, Mark had just moved to Colorado and was struggling to find a job, so he applied to the DIA, the Denver International Airport. And much to his surprise, as he had no experience, they hired him to work on the lower levels at the train station. Many don't know it, but there's actually a little train located under the DIA, and it runs between each concourse. These are concourses A, B, and C, and they are each of the buildings that make up the Denver airport. He had a really easygoing boss, the job paid well, and it was pretty straightforward, so Mark was really enjoying it at the time. The train itself required a lot of maintenance to keep it up and running, so Mark kept busy working 50 to 60 hours a week. And of course, the train couldn't be shut down during the day, so they would have to decommission it at night and clean the components once a week. So for Mark, the vibe was right. Everything was going good in his life. He had a steady job, money in his pockets, and he was even beginning to enjoy Colorado. Mark's good life went on for months, until one night when he was covering somebody's shift at the DIA, everything changed. At the time of the incident, Mark was no stranger to the conspiracy theories surrounding the Denver International Airport. Being that he was the new guy, he was the recipient of all the old spooky tales that the veterans were eager to tell, like the tale of Lucifer, the big blue horse that stands in front of the DIA. Known for killing its creator, Lucifer is said to represent end times and the coming apocalypse. Rumor has it his red-hot eyes can glow deep into your soul, and they can drive the most sane man mad. Or that the Freemasons and Illuminati are rooted deep within the culture below the DIA. This is represented in what look like beautiful murals and paintings scattered throughout the walls. And we can't forget the underground tunnels and the shape of the airport itself. Or the incident that took place almost a decade ago when 14 different planes' windshields just shattered out of nowhere. Though it was labeled a weather-related anomaly, many believe that it was from electromagnetic pulse testing done deep within the underground tunnels. But what the population doesn't know is these are the public's theories. The real stories are whispered among the people that work there, especially those that are employed in the tunnels. These accounts have an even more evil ring to them. He heard most of the older conspiracies from the janitors that had been there since the 90s. For example, the ones that had worked in the underground tunnels had heard a loud moaning sound, one that was both high and low pitched, like it was from a crowd of people. For the most part, they only heard this loud moaning at night, and they said sometimes it would drive them crazy. There was also the story of the employee who got lost, and he was lost for a few days trying to find his way to the top, and apparently he stumbled upon a room that had weird glyphs all over it, and a keypad like nothing he had ever seen. This keypad was mounted on the wall, and they called it the keypad to nowhere. Luckily, he didn't press any of the buttons. He found his way out and was okay. In Concourse 23, that was supposedly located below the abandoned automatic baggage tunnels. This area is said to have ties with the Army or even German military. And one of the janitors, they called him Old Tom because he had been there since the opening of DIA, complained about a supersonic frequency or noise that bothered him regularly. He claimed this noise would make him feel ill to his stomach, or kind of stupid, foggy, like he couldn't think. He believed it was some sort of mind control experiment. But this new employee really didn't buy into all that. Though he liked to hear the stories, he didn't believe any of them had merit. But he goes on to say that there is something oddly eerie about the place, very unusual, and that the locals, when building the DIA, were very angry at the costs and how much it kept going up as the project went on. Their main complaint was that the previous airport, the Stapleton, didn't really have anything wrong with it, and that there was no need to build a new airport. And it was built in the middle of nowhere, in a low valley no less. For the most part, this gentleman believed that the conspiracies were fantasy, that they had no backing and were mostly just to poke fun at new guys. But there was one conspiracy in particular that did intrigue him, and it was because he worked by it every day. This one was about the locked door in the underground tunnels between Concourse B and C. It seemed to be tucked away nicely between the fans that kept the air circulating in the tunnels. And virtually every employee who had worked in the underground tunnels had tried to use every key they had to open it, but no one could. So all the employees walked by this locked door daily, and virtually every one of them had tried to use all their keys to open it, but not one worked. Some figured it was just a prank by the staff to see who was honest and who would try to open the door. Others figured it was nothing but a maintenance closet with a water heater in it. Nevertheless, a large number of them continued to speculate that it was something like a Masonic meeting room or a tomb. Some even suggested that it was a door that led to an underground military base that kept anti-gravity and alien craft in it. The new guy pondered over it often. He found himself thinking about it when he lay his head down at night. But he really just thought it was some joke or a trick. Nevertheless, his imagination continued to run wild. And as he worked, months went by and nothing out of the ordinary happened. Until one day. It was late at night in the end of his shift and he was getting ready to leave when suddenly he saw the flash of a bright light. In a flicker, he immediately recognized it as a flashlight that was getting pointed towards him, then away from him. Curiously, he walked up to the glass door that separated the underground tunnels from the airport, and he peered in.
He figured to see something normal, like a coworker looking for some maintenance items or somebody making their last rounds, but it was far from it. He saw a man kneeling in front of the locked door. He was wearing a pristine black suit and a gas mask. He kept peering over his shoulder as if paranoid, looking up and down the track to make sure nobody was around. He had his back turned so the new guy went unseen, and he watched and observed as he seemed to mess around with a bag or something of the sort. The gloss finish on his black dress shoes shined in the dim light of his flashlight. His mind began racing with thoughts of the conspiracies he had heard from his coworkers. He observed nervously, hoping he was going to enter the locked door, when suddenly he turned around looking at Concourse C. The new guy slid behind the wall immediately. He did not want to be seen. His heart was in his throat. He stood there briefly, not knowing why he didn't want the man to see him, but he just didn't. And when he had caught his breath, he peered back around the corner, and the man was gone. After that, he didn't wait around any longer. He left for home immediately, confused and scared. As his head hit the pillow, he couldn't help but replay what he saw in his mind over and over again. He'd show up to work the next day, but he hadn't decided whether he should tell his fellow employees or not. So he shows up to work the next day, dog-tired from being up all night. After getting to work, he had decided to ask a coworker that he was close to about the man. He decided to ask her over anyone else because he didn't want to be deemed a crackpot or a liar that was just trying to add to the lore of the place. As she was exiting the break room, he quickly walked up to her and said, "Hey, I saw something last night." She skeptically raised an eyebrow. "Something here." "I picked up a late night shift and I was getting ready to leave when I saw a man dressed in all black wearing a gas mask by the locked door. He didn't look official, he looked too official," he said. "A gas mask?" she said, clearly not amused. He nods. "I know it's legal here," she said, "but take it easy." He rolls his eyes and kind of shakes his head. She sighs. "It could have just been a Fed checking for an EMP," she says. "Or maybe even a second inspector doing cosplay," she kind of chuckles to herself. "But it is pretty weird. Just don't tell Tom." They both laugh. He could feel the adrenaline from fear rising like a volcano in his gut. Who was that man? He thought to himself. She looks over and can see the distress on his face. She quickly pulls him aside and lowers her voice to a whisper. "Look, this wouldn't be the first time somebody had witnessed a man dressed in all black mysteriously wandering the area late at night. But you're better off to forget about it. It's just another day at the office." He looked at her and smiled, wondering whether or not she was telling the truth or lying just to appease him. She winks at him and then walks away. But it was on this night that his worst fears came true. Once again, before the end of his shift, the supervisor had asked him to stay late and do one last inspection on the train, as it had been malfunctioning all day. It was very late at night. He was virtually the only one there. There was nobody left in the tunnel. Of course, they would ask me to stay late the night before my 3-day weekend, he thought to himself. He made his way towards the train, and his heart began pounding as he was approaching the locked door. And that's when his feet turned into heavy bricks. He inches closer to the door, and his legs feel heavier and heavier until he reaches it. That's when he glances over, and sure enough, it's open. He notices a bright light emanating from the door, looks around, makes sure nobody's there, and steps in. He stepped in, squinting his eyes because the glare was so bright, but he could see the rest of the room after they adjusted. It was about 300 square feet, and it was made of a light steel-like metal. It was completely empty. There wasn't a soul in sight. On both sides of the room were 2 heavy doors. One was pitch black, and the other was pure rust. Both doors were closed. The rusty one was at a slight angle. He glances over at the black door and sees the gas mask. He looked at it for a few moments and even contemplated putting it on, when suddenly, boom! The door to the tunnels slammed shut. Panicked, he sprinted to the door, hoping that it would open without a problem, but it was locked. He ran over to the black door and grabbed the handle. It moved with ease, but he pushed and pulled, and no matter how hard he tried, it just wouldn't open. He slowly turned around and looked at the door covered in rust. It looked almost evil. It was so rusty and seemingly weather-beaten, the flakes of rust were piled up around the front of the door. He approaches it cautiously, grabs the handle, and pushes it down. It opened. At first, it was stuck, but as he gave it everything he had,
it finally broke free and made a loud screeching sound as it opened. Inside was a dimly lit staircase that descended to the darkness below. He hesitated for a moment, but his curiosity got the best of him. He took the first step, and before you know it, he was counting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and he figured he had gone down about 5 stories when they stopped. He glances back up and can barely see the dim light from the top of the stairs, then enters the corridor. It was complete darkness, but eventually his eyes adjusted, and it seemed the tunnel gave off a red glow. He glances up towards the end of it, and sure enough, an exit. He gasped in relief. Eventually, the tunnel opened up to a cavernous area that the height of it seemed so high he couldn't even see it. He glances back at the tunnel and notices that above the doorway there was a sign that said, "The abyss looks back." He walks into the cavern and he can hear his footsteps echoing throughout, when suddenly a light shines from above. It lights up a small metal table in the middle of the room. Under it, a black chair. He approaches and notices a pool of odd liquid surrounding the table, but then sees a black binder on top of it. The top of the binder read, "Hope to God it doesn't happen. In case of a breach, procedure." He grabs the book and flips it open. At the top, it says quarantine procedures. He fumbles it, it hits the table, making a loud noise. As soon as that notebook hit the table, he knew he screwed up, and it started immediately. It began a dull roar, and then almost a hissing sound, with loud screeches throughout it. Mark was looking everywhere, trying to locate the source of the sound, with no luck. When in the dense blackness, he made out what looked to be a large chasm to his left. He moves towards it with caution, because he can barely see the faint edge. He slowly shuffled his way up to it and looked down, and that's when he saw them. It was a sick horde of black bodies. It looked like one entity. They were intertwined with each other, tangled together, always moving. He couldn't tell if it was for pain or pleasure. As he looked around, he could see tunnels laden throughout the wall of the chasm. He was almost in a trance watching them in awe, thinking to himself, this is almost like a hive. That's when suddenly, 30 or 40 of them instantly looked up at him, and he could see the whites of their eyes. Mark let out a quick screech and took a couple steps backwards, tripping and falling to the ground. While on the ground, he hears a loud clang behind him. He looks, and there's 5 or 6 of them fighting over the metal table and the notebook he was just looking at. He stands up, and they all freeze and look at him. They seemed almost baffled. They hadn't seen somebody in possibly decades. Mark is terrified, while the creatures seem curious. They cocked their head to the side and let out a loud screech. They suddenly lunged at him and began chasing him. He ran with all his might. He could hear the creatures battling and fighting for the best position, chasing him down, clawing and scratching just to get to him. He didn't even take the time to look back because they were so close to him. Due to their fighting, he finally started to gain a little distance when he came upon a massive wall that went straight up, thinking to himself, God, please let there be an exit. And as he's reaching the wall, he hears a loud whistle to his left. He glances towards the sound and he can't believe his eyes. It's the man in black, wearing his mask, waving at him. Come here, this way. As he was just about to take off, Mark looks back one more time at the Wendigo-like creatures, and they were so wretched, he froze in fear. The agent yells, Hey! He snaps out of it and starts running towards him with all of his might. He ran with everything he had. He reached the door and the agent pulled him inside, not angrily, but as if he was trying to save his life. As Mark passed the threshold of the door, the agent started pushing it shut. He took a couple seconds to gather his wind. He yells, Thanks! The agent gives him a thumbs up and points at the stairs. He looks, and the stairs lead up to the black door. As Mark starts to sprint up the stairs, he notices an insignia carved above the black door. He turns around and yells, wanting to ask the agent so many questions. The agent says, Go! He turns and grabs a massive pistol out of his holster. Mark again starts sprinting up the stairs. He stops quickly to turn around. The agent is no longer in sight. He can only see the bright flashes from the gun. He thinks to himself, Man, those flashes are much brighter than any gun I've ever seen. That's no ordinary powder pistol. He hears 6 shots ring out and 6 loud screeches from the creatures. Each of them high-pitched screams with low-pitched grumbling noises. When Mark hears the last screech, he stumbles for a quick second, but gathers his footing and continues up the stairs. That's when he gets a better look at the insignia. It was a lion wearing a crown and a unicorn wearing a jeweled necklace, holding a shield split into 4 sections. On top of the shield was an open eye with an iris shaped like a 23-point star. He only knows this because he had time to count as he waited for the black door to open. It turns out the black door was a tinted glass portal to an elevator. Mark frantically pushed the red button on the touchscreen next to the elevator, cursing how slow it was. He heard one last shot ring out with a loud screech. Must have reloaded, thought Mark to himself. The screech sent chills down his spine, and the door loudly beeped and flung open. He threw himself inside. A soft female voice spoke out. Leaving sub-basement 23. Decontamination in progress. And he looks up and sees jetters all over the ceiling. And just in time, he looks at the floor and it begins spraying him. The stuff was cold and almost melted his clothes right off. The doors flung open and across the hall was the actual black door from the beginning of the night. He went, grabbed the door handle, it was unlocked. He went in. It was a 300 square foot room, and then he saw the infamous locked door. As he approaches it, he glances over at the rusty door. That too was shut tight. He quickly ran up to it, grabbed the handle, and pulled it open. It was unlocked. It was now daylight and first shift was starting. It had been hours since he'd been in there. Disoriented and with a tattered uniform, he walks through the tunnels, and he runs into his friend. Looking at him with suspicious eyes, "Hey, are you still here? The boss said you had went home, but you never checked back in with him. What's going on? Hey man, are you okay? You look all wet. What happened?" "I thought I heard a loud scream. A lot of people did." Yeah, I'm fine," Mark says. No, I'm not fine. I'm not feeling well. Will you tell the boss for me? Oh, and I didn't get a chance to fix the fans. I gotta go." "Okay, sure," she says, "but get some rest," as he ran out the doors. He didn't get a wink of sleep that weekend. He kept replaying the events over and over and over again in his mind, pondering whether this certain insignia represented a organization or a potential cabal that was protecting humanity from these creatures. But why were they keeping them alive? Were they human experiments, or were they possibly going to use them for war? These thoughts just kept racing through his mind. But there was one thing that never stopped replaying. The phrase that rattled in his head the most was, "The abyss looks back." The most disturbing part of all this is as he lay there with his head on his pillow on the last night of his 3-day weekend, he couldn't wait to go back to work, to investigate it further. He had to find and meet the agent. He had to know what those were.
Shazam! I'm the genie of the lamp.
All right, my Night God people, we got to get to the bottom of this Mandela effect once and for all, because it's got the entire internet at odds right now. The argument is surrounding this movie that millions swear they watched all the time as a kid. It's called Shazam, and it's where Sinbad plays a genie. It's going viral over multiple platforms as we speak, and the comment sections are lit. It seems that a large portion of the population knows it never existed, and they never watched it growing up, while the other half swears they watched it all the time, especially those born in the early 80s and the early 90s. People of that era swear this movie existed. I personally don't remember watching it, but millions of people swear they did. And there's even videos of people that are pulling the tapes out of safes to show people that it did exist. But the only thing is I never see anybody actually put the video in a VCR and start playing it and showing different scenes of the movie. The following clip is the only thing I could find. Now I want you to pay attention. I'm going to go through and point out all the Mandela effects in this one singular scene. There's at least 3 or 4 of them. They have the Curious George Mandela effect with his tail. They have Fruit Loops with the spelling of fruit. They even have an article from a newspaper that says Nelson Mandela dead. And no, it wasn't from the 2000s. It was saying when he died in prison. Now you gotta ask yourself, why would somebody do a scene with so many different Mandela effects? Are they trying to tell us something, or are they trying to mess with our minds? But before I continue, check out the scene. Let me know what you think. Alright, y'all, check out all the Mandela effects in this video.
Something real.
First one.
We can remember her by.
Here's George on his tail.
We have our memories. They're real. No one can take that from us.
Next one you'll see is the Berenstain Bears.
Can you imagine if Dad saw this mess?
Fruit Loops.
Bless you.
Okay, I got that backwards. Now Berenstain Bears. Then,
What
over
is
there,
that?
you'll see Mandela dead at the age of 68. He actually died in his 80s.
Whoa.
You even see the Monopoly board, but it had the spot where the monocle would be torn out. Now, it is alleged they did this as a skit because of all the hype that's surrounding the Mandela effect. And he does look older in this skit, but I'm not sure.
Y'all not Tina.
We'll get into what Sinbad says about it after this clip. Now, does anybody else find it somewhat odd that all those Mandela effects were in the same clip? But as you can see, somebody provided a copy, Shazam and the VHS. But if you go to Google or any type of search engine, it said the movie isn't actually real. I even went as far as to Snopes it, and they said it is also false, that it never existed. And Sinbad himself verifies this. In fact, he gets asked this question so much that he even gets frustrated by it. You can see it in his response. Here he is denying the claim.
Good Burger.
Check it out.
Take your order, and then you do damn Shazam, right?
No, it never happened. There's no
Never
Shazam.
happened.
Wait a minute, the movie was bad.
No, everybody thinks Shazam is the Mandela effect. Everybody swears I did a movie called Shazam. Now think about this.
I think it's the Sinbad.
They're getting him mixed up with Sinbad the Sailor, allegedly?
Turned into the Sinbad the Sailor.
But where does
turned
this
into-
scene come from?
No, man, it was a lot. Everyone thought it was Shazam. It started about 2008, 2000. I don't even know how it got started. I don't even know how it started. Then it got to the point. People remember the same scene. They only remember one scene. Me and two little kids. They don't remember no other part of the movie. And everybody says, I watched it as a kid. I said, okay, you didn't watch it. I would give 10,000. I put it online. I would give 10,000 to anybody to bring up the video.
10
Everybody got
bands.
fake boxes. They Photoshop boxes. Where's the tape in the box?
Photoshop boxes.
It's beyond that. It's beyond it because Mandela was in prison. You know, the Berenstain Bears, the Were Bears. There was never a Shazam. There was never a G movie. So this one has no basis on anything.
So in this next video, he gets pretty wild with it. Now, I'm not sure whether or not it's because he's frustrated about the question. He's been asked it so many times. He answers in this way, or maybe there's some truth to it because he answers in this way often. So maybe he was using drugs during the time of production and the movie was so bad that he's embarrassed about it. I'm not sure what I think. Watch this and let me know what you guys think.
I'm embarrassed.
All right, check it
telling
out.
people I never did Shazam, and people always walk up on me, and I'm just gonna tell you what happened. I didn't do Shazam. I'm not proud of it. When I did Shazam, I was doing a lot of. I was staying in houses.
Not the
and I did
first time he's
Shazam.
made this claim.
I knew it was gonna be a great movie because I have no genie skills. I think most movies you have to bring something out of
But he
yourself.
gets
I've never
sarcastic.
been a genie or had magical powers. It was a learning process for me as I was doing this movie, just getting into the lamp. I took a lot of yoga, a lot of crystal oil to slide up into that lamp. So, I injured myself. I had a rotator cuff injury. But, I'm not crying. I'm not crying because I'm tough. For those who said, hey, you saw Shazam when I was growing up, yeah, you did.
Okay.
It did exist. It took a lot of government intervention to get those videos out of people's homes and out of the video stores. I'm lucky because I'm ex-military, ex-special forces. So we were able to do a lot of mind control stuff
Wild.
to get those videotapes away from people. There are 3 tapes left. There are 3 Shazam videos still out there we did not find. And if we find you, we're going to kill you. And I just want you to know that. I want you to be aware of that because I felt bad that you didn't know you're on a hit list. And I'm ashamed.
So those are some pretty outlandish things to say and pretty outlandish claims to make. Was he being sarcastic? I'm leaning towards yes, but if it was that bad of a movie, would he have incentive to go along with that it never existed? Maybe he wishes it never did. All I know is this is by far one of the wildest Mandela effects I've ever heard. This goes beyond any Mandela effect that exists out there, from the E in Berenstain to Curious George's tail. This was, did it exist or did it not exist? And I can't wait to see y'all blow up the comments and how many people are going to say that they watched this movie growing up. And then on the other side of the spectrum, there's going to be many that say it never existed. Now, a lot of people think that they're mixing it up with this movie, Kazam, with Shaquille O'Neal. Now, I did watch this movie growing up, and I watched it a lot. I really liked it. Looking back, cheesy as heck, but I enjoyed the film. So many believe that they're mixing Shaq and Sinbad up. They're thinking about the movie called Kazam. And he also does go, "I am Kazam" in the movie. That's like his main line as the genie. But in this movie, he literally comes out of a stereo. So crazy stuff. I'm curious what y'all have to say about it. The Legend of Lake Vostok. 1998, Russian and U.S. teams pulled a 2-mile-long core out of the surface of Antarctica. 14 years later, after almost 30 years working on a project, they cracked into the cavern of Lake Vostok. Many studies had showed that the O2 content around Lake Vostok was 20 times that of anywhere on the Earth's surface. The oxygen content, along with the lake being a time capsule for the last 15 million years, provided perfect conditions for it to be teeming with new life. As the expedition team neared the cavern, they knew something was wrong when within 50 feet, all comms shut off. With radio silent, they got to the lake's ice shores and an eerie feeling crept over them. But regardless of any feelings they had, they pressed on with the mission. They dove in the lake and quickly began taking samples. Frantically, their colleagues at the surface tried to reach them to no avail, unaware that the team was already fighting for their lives. As one of the Russian scientists was collecting samples, he saw another team member swimming up to him and began swimming towards him. A fear crept over him, but it was too late. They called it specimen 46B, and his colleagues had to watch as 46B tore him limb from limb, consuming every piece. The fans have spoken. This is the Legend of Lake Vostok Part 2. February of 2012, a U.S. and Russian-based Arctic team broke through the last 50 feet of ice to get to Lake Vostok, 2 miles below Arctic surface. As soon as they broke through the cavern wall, all comms went out. Regardless, the team pressed on, eager to collect new species. When on their first dive, one Russian scientist was attacked by what is referenced as specimen number 46B. Day 1 in the water, they watched as their colleague got ripped apart limb from limb, the octopus chewing each piece with its massive beak. It was at this moment scientists realized they were in big trouble. 46B looked like a descendant of the octopus, except it had 14 legs and was highly intelligent, comparatively as smart as the average person. It was such an efficient predator it could virtually mimic its prey. So with the only exit being back through the lake, the scientists knew what they had to do. On day 2, they attempted their first escape. Not long after they dove, a shadowy figure began approaching from the right, and out of nowhere, a diver stopped swimming. Like for Part 3. The Legend of Lake Vostok Part 3. It's day 2 in the cavern and the team's attempting to make their escape back through the water. They're making good pace when all of a sudden one of the divers stopped. The team continued on when one of the females noticed he was gone. Being the closest, she began swimming back towards him. By this time, the rest of the team realized what was happening. With the stopped diver still hypnotized, the scientists noticed a large dark figure approaching the man, and began frantically signaling. As feared, it was specimen 46B, coming back for another meal. While cloaked, the team unknowingly swam by, as 46 released a toxin, the clear toxin paralyzing its prey. The female diver who was closest bravely began swimming back towards the man. Looking over, she noticed 46B had disappeared, when suddenly out of nowhere, with lightning-fast precision, 46 grabbed the man around the neck and slowly began pulling him towards the depths. Stunned, she realized the beast had her around the neck also. She quickly grabbed her Bowie knife and cut the beast's arm off. Sorry, Part 4. The Legend of Lake Vostok Part 4. After a female scientist cut off its leg, the beast retreated. Knowing they didn't have much time, the team went back to shore. That night, they came up with a new strategy. They were going to go on the offense. Had we not had PhDs, said one scientist, I don't think we would have outsmarted the beast. After coming up with a plan, they all turned to bed. As they were sleeping, the water began to ripple. It couldn't have been the beast, it was too small. Then, one of its tentacles slowly slithered onto shore. Yes, it is highly possible octopuses today have this ability, as they have neurotransmitters throughout each tentacle, which is essentially its own brain. As they slept, the tentacle went around checking each person, looking for one in particular, the female scientist who cut him off. The next morning, the team woke up, and she was dead. Rather than kill the rest, the beast only killed her, as if taunting them all. The beast got his revenge. I love y'all, Part 5. Lake Vostok, Part 5. They started with 8, now they were 5. The team had had enough. They were gonna trap this beast. And as morbid as it sounds, now they had bait, knowing the beast would come back for the female body. After getting set up, they pushed the female body into the water. Like clockwork, the beast heard the vibrations. Knowing the beast liked to attack from below and in the dark, the scientists set up a clear-like net that was weighted and big enough to catch the 30-foot beast. Just as anticipated, 46 took the bait. They successfully captured the alien-like creature. As it was struggling, 46B let out a blood-curdling scream while staring the scientists in the eyes. The team was ecstatic. They hooked the netting to the winch and pulled it up. After they were all out, they plugged the hole and never talked about the incident again until now. Instead of coming back heroes, Putin called them liars. They couldn't believe it. Part 6. Alright, so wrapping it up, this is what happened. When the team got back to Russia, they presented Vladimir Putin with the beast. Thinking they were about to be up for the Nobel Prize, Putin rained on their parade quick. He basically called them liars to the media and told them never to speak of it again. Or the former KGB member will do what he has to do. And that's why the scientists came out with the story, which many people still today don't believe. But they figure that Putin, what he wants to do is weaponize it, or create some sort of super soldier out of it. See, some octopi lay up to 200,000 eggs per batch. Could you imagine 200,046 bees? Especially if they're intelligent enough to train, could be something lethal. But if so, they haven't used them yet. In 1957, the CIA quietly declassified a document claiming the cover-up of one of the greatest empires in the world's history. Here in blue, you can see that it covered most of Asia, and it was known as the Grand Tartary. The Tartarian reign dates all the way back to 1200 AD, and here you can see it in gold. It covered 3.1 million square miles at one point, and here you can see it even covered most of the Americas. Historical texts state that they were multicultural and had multiple religions. They were also a nation of science. There are claims that they had a way to sustain free energy for everybody. Some even believe they figured out the secret to longevity of life. These upper body statues of the Tartarian people say they lived longer than 100 years. Check out the dates, 1368 to 1507. Are they the real reason for the Great Wall of China? Part 2. The CIA declassification of the Tartarian cover-up, Part 2. This picture was from the Turquoise Globe from 1744. This depicts the Great Wall of China, and it says, a wall of 400 leagues built between the bottoms of the mountains by the King of China against the incursions of the Tartars. Not the Mongolians, the Tartars. In history, for some reason, it stated the Mongolians were attempting to raid China, and that they looked like this. Above is a depiction of Genghis Khan and what we were taught that he looks like. And this is probably going to anger some people. But in real, Genghis Khan was white, and so was his wife. And I know, it sounds crazy, people, but look it up. It's true. This is a world atlas of the 1800s. Here, Tartarian flag. The land of Tartary, represented by an owl. An owl. More owls. Owl on the dollar bill, 3. In 1957, the government released top secret information about the cover-up of one of the greatest empires in world history. You see them on this map dating back to the 1700s. Where they inhabit is highlighted in yellow. Asia and almost all of North America and Canada. They even existed up through the 19th and 20th centuries. You can see their flags here. I also found it interesting that their nation was represented by an owl. And you still see this owl depicted to this day. OVO. The dollar bill even depicts owls. And for those of you that don't know, the Illuminati is represented by an owl. This ancient text, Empire de Tartary. It is believed that their nation was multicultural and multi-religion. They had free sustaining energy and had learned how to live in peace. This is one of their fortresses, shaped kind of like a star. Remind you of something? Check out our Statue of Liberty. They were architectural masters, but their history is buried. Why? So a couple weeks ago, I made a viral video claiming that I may have found a bunch of underwater pyramids all over the ocean floors. I made this claim after the discovery of an underwater pyramid near the Azores Islands off Portugal. Here's the pyramid on Google Earth. So naturally, I thought if there's one, there must be more, and I found one here and here. And if you look nearby, you can find a bunch more. So as the post currently sits at 10 million views, the comments have been interesting to say the least. The most common claim is that it's underwater volcanoes created by the tectonic plates. And I understand there are underwater volcanoes, but this many? Come on. But okay, I took it into consideration and looked into it. And here's what I found. This is the ocean floor near Easter Island. If you take a good look, you'll notice these. They're perfectly round structures with an almost pyramidal shape at the top. Above is a closer look. They're dome-shaped and all over the ocean floor. I even found them near Hawaii, Part 2. Underwater Pyramids and Civilizations, Part 2. So while I was looking for pyramids on the ocean floor on Google Earth, I started noticing these structures. I first noticed them around Easter Island, then Hawaii, and then I started seeing them in various places all over the ocean floor. Regardless, they were much more sparse than pyramids though, so these must have been built by a different clan. But at a certain point of observing these, I noticed something. Oftentimes they'd be seen in clusters of 5 or 10 and right in a row, and that some of the structures in these clusters were collapsed while others weren't. This was consistent everywhere I found them. So I came up with the conclusion that due to the immense pressure of the water and erosion over time, some of them would cave in. And that would go for the pyramids as well. They were also collapsing. So to the masses who don't exactly know ancient history, they look like volcanoes. Go ahead and take a look for yourself. Like and follow for more interesting content. Alright fam, now this is just a hunch, but I think I figured something out. You know me, I was up last night looking at some Google Earth. And if you haven't already noticed them, behind me, notice the lines. Perfectly straight. Since I started Google Earthing, I've been noticing them all over the ocean floor. And I've always been told they're just drag lines from ships. So I just ignore them. But I got to looking at them. And they're always in perfectly straight lines. And that got me to thinking, if it was a ship in a drag line for fishing, it wouldn't be perfectly straight. With the currents and the waves and everything going on in the ocean, the boat gets tossed around often. And not only that, with all the anomalies and the mountain passes and all that on the ocean floor, the nets would get thrown off. They wouldn't be perfect. And then I got to thinking, God, these look like they're pretty good size for the scale of Google Earth. So I measured one. They're 4 miles wide. So naturally I thought, well, a road system, right? But if it's a roadway, why do they take such sharp angles? And why do they go out of their way over here when the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line? They just cut straight through. And when I say these run everywhere, fam, they're all over the world. Only on the ocean floor though. Through mountain passes. Perfect. Zigzag. The Red Sea. Boom. Up. So naturally I started following them. And a lot of times, they'd converge into one spot. And this is what these spots would oftentimes look like up close. Like a grid. And here's another one up close. Like almost like a grid, like a town. So I continued to follow them. Eventually it led me to the Azores Islands. And if you look closely, it comes into the Azores Islands. There's 3, 2, 3. What look like roadways coming off of it. So it's a hub of some sort. And those of you that watch my videos know that I pointed out the Azores Pyramid, which was bigger than the Pyramid of Giza recently discovered underwater. And that's when it hit me like a freight train, fam. When I was originally exploring the Azores Pyramid, I stumbled upon this. Here's what it looks like zoomed in. What are those? A piping network. Now some of y'all are going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to prove it. These are canals. Yes, you heard me right. A network of canals. Canals built by an ancient civilization to distribute water on Earth, part 2. My number one reasoning for this hypothesis? Mars. In the late 1800s, when astronomers first had good enough telescopes to look at Mars, they all drew them the same, with a vast network of highly technical canals to distribute water from the poles. This is a separate astronomer from the last picture. Same thing. And this is a 1962 Air Force sketch after they looked at Mars. Same thing. But if you look at Mars now, it's usually too hazy or foggy to see it. And what was Mars supposedly ravaged by? Nuclear war. Could this have happened here? Very possible. Most likely did. And it wasn't necessarily nuclear war. It could have been an asteroid. But either way, it either totally evaporated or incinerated the oceans. This is the Atlantic Ocean on Google Earth, towards the North Pole. Look at these massive fissures, if you will. What they're calling fault lines were man-made. And they were man-made to distribute water from the ice caps. Again, this is just a theory, but it has validity. Go take a look for yourself. They're all over the ocean floor, and they're perfectly grid-like. They're done geometrically perfect. My guess
The giants. The giants' civilization built them. When I said in my other video that fault in the Pacific Ocean was a trade route, it was. But it wasn't because the earth gave it water. It's because it was a massive canal. And the higher civilizations back then built them. Take a look from a distance. Up to the ice cap. All the way down. Then it breaks off. Even further back. Boom. Guarantee it. Otherwise, why wouldn't those two faults continue to the land? It was either a nuclear winter or an asteroid. When it first made impact, it had the force of 1,000 nuclear bombs. This would evaporate the water. This was said in scripture. At some point, the oceans burn up. Then nuclear winter, ice age. My guess would be that massive asteroid that they found under Antarctica, the crater that's 300 miles wide. So this would have been pre-Great Flood. And eventually, they probably figured out the subterranean pocket full of fresh water. Either that or the higher beings knew about it and they cracked it open. Again, this is subject to scrutiny, but take a look for yourself. I'm telling you, you heard it here first. Like and follow for more. Hollow Earths on other planets? You heard it here first. So by now, if you're a TikToker, then you've heard the theory of Hollow Earth. The first entrance on Earth was discovered by Admiral Richard Byrd in 1926 on his solo flight to the North Pole. He would then discover the other entrance in 1947 in Antarctica on Operation High Jump. Admiral Byrd's accounts have always intrigued me, so recently I did another story about a Venetian that came to visit Earth in the 1950s. He went by the name of Valiant Thor. You can go ahead and look it up. He supposedly worked at the Pentagon for over 3 years. He looked exactly like us, but he said he was from Venus. But of course the question arose, how are you living on Venus? It's so much closer to the sun, the surface is 800 degrees. To which he would reply, I don't live on the surface. We live in hollow Venus. After that, bells went off. If Earth is not only hollow, but Venus is as well, what does that mean? The potential for other planets to be hollow is high. So I began to look into this, starting with Mars. Here's Mars's North Pole. Can you see the little hole right in the middle? On top of that, this picture came from near Mars's South Pole. And it is believed that this is the full picture. Hollow Earth on Mars? Check. Next, I did Jupiter, and the first thing that popped up was this massive solar storm happening at the North Pole. At the time, this was happening every 26 minutes, and the light was brighter than the sun. So a hollow Jupiter? Yes. Then came Saturn, and this is mind-boggling. This is Saturn's South Pole, shaped perfectly like a hexagon. And you can see that obviously it circles in towards the center. Now I'm going to go out on a limb here. Saturn has a hollow Earth. Now we have Neptune. There's the North Pole of Neptune, circling in to one point. Now obviously I can't verify, but Saturn, hollow Earth. Then Uranus. A lot of people don't know this, but it's actually setting on its side. So poles are east and west. Scientists blame this on impact from a massive asteroid. This would result in the poles shifting, probably why Earth did as well. But as you can see, at the north end, they're having similar light phenomena. They claim the northern lights come from solar winds, which they may. But I gotta say, I find it odd that in all these planets, every one of them, the northern lights happen at the poles. If this light phenomenon was because of the interception of solar winds, why wouldn't it happen all over the planet? This comes from the Awakening the Truth 24/7 network. The lost city of Agartha discovered. A research team has discovered the lost city of Agartha, also known as the City of Crystals, located in Antarctica. As Admiral Byrd would describe in his diaries, it had rainbow hues of color. It also says that it's connected by an underground tunnel system to the Giza pyramids. The following is said to be video shot of the actual entrance to Agartha.